This meeting is called to order. It's on. It's on. Is it working? Yes? Okay. As we did last year during the budget season, we have a competent technician here to help us video game the evening. Oh, yeah, I'm not nervous about tonight. This meeting will be videotaped, as are all budget meetings. And then they're available via YouTube on the Maranacook area website. So I want you all to be aware that the world is watching us this evening. And now I'll call the meeting to order.
The board has been very supportive of our interventionists and our intervention program in the last several years, and the community has been very supportive of the budget when we've been talking and voting on adding interventionists. So tonight I thought, as we started our budget meetings, that it would be appropriate to hear from the interventionists about the programs that we are offering. So we're going to start with the elementary and work into the middle school and then the high school, each group talking about their interventionists. So I'd like to introduce Maria Runge, who is the reading literacy interventionist at Reedfield.
Sorry, this isn't my computer. All right. Good evening. So I'm Maria Runge. I'm the literacy specialist at Reedfield Elementary, and I'm here representing the literacy specialists at the elementary level. So the presentation that I have tonight is focusing mostly on working with our students. So it's our caseload of students, not the other stuff that we do. So we're just talking about student instruction. So this first slide just kind of talks about who do we serve. So we work with students in K-5 who do not meet grade level benchmark scores, and that's determined by their assessment results from the DRA as well as the NWEA. The DRA is a reading assessment that's done on paper and pencil. They have to read and respond. The NWEA is a computerized multiple choice assessment. The DRA and NWEA is given 3 times a year, September, January, and May, but students may be picked up for support at any time during the year. And usually teachers will let us know if there are some students that they have concerns about. What do we teach? So here are just some of the things that the literacy specialists focus on when we work with students in intervention. Different aspects of word work, accuracy, comprehension, fluency, written responses to reading, and we also provide professional development for teachers as well. How are students being taught? So this slide shows us the breakdown of how our students are instructed. So some students in our program we work with one-on-one, and some students we work on in small groups. And it really depends on the student's needs, how we determine who gets what kind of instruction. So the number of students being served by literacy specialists and literacy ed techs across the district. So this slide shows us the number of students seen by literacy interventionists at each grade level across the entire district. And this is based on fall 2016 data. So this is the beginning of this school year. These are the numbers of students that each of these interventionists work with at each grade level. And if you see the Mount Vernon, it says push in. They do it a little bit differently at the kindergarten level. So instead of pulling individual students or small groups of students out, they have a literacy ed tech who goes into the classroom to help support those students who might need it with the teacher. So they're kind of working more in a collaborative model. So over the past few years, we've put a heavy focus on early intervention, which means targeting kids in kindergarten through second grade, with the hopes that if we get students caught up before third grade, many of those students would be reading at grade level and would no longer need our services after third grade. So research shows that the earlier we target students and catch them up, the better success, because they haven't yet fallen too far behind. So if you look at these numbers, if you look at K to 2, you're going to see that we're serving more students at those earlier grades than if you look at the 3 to 5. And so the reasoning is just because it makes more sense to catch them up before they fall too far behind, because once they fall really far behind, it's really hard to catch them back up to grade level, because that requires them to not only make a year's worth of growth, but more than a year's worth of growth in less than a year's worth of time. Okay, so this graph shows the number of students receiving Title I support, and this is just at Reedfield. I just used a sample population, and since it's my data, I happen to have it available. And it shows the number of students receiving literacy interventions at each grade level at RES in 2010 and in 2016. So what this shows us is our model 5-6 years ago, we were waiting till students were falling behind before we would pick them up. Whereas now, we're picking kids up before they fall too far behind, with the hopes that they wouldn't need us anymore as they got older. So we started looking at the students we were providing interventions to in 3 through, sorry, wait a minute. Yeah, so the yellow is 2010 and the blue is 2016, for those of you in the back. And once our students were behind, especially in the upper grades, they needed to make sometimes 2 or more years' growth in reading within one school year. So now, when students are targeted and caught up in K to 2, we have fewer students in 3 to 5 needing intervention. Or if they do need support, they tend to be a few reading levels behind instead of a few years behind. So even those kids that still might need a little bit of support in grades 3 to 5, they don't need as much. We can kind of catch them up quickly and move them out. Focus back on those younger students. So something was interesting. As I was looking at all this data, I was thinking to myself, so if our K to 2 interventions are working, I'm wondering, looking at my own data, why am I still working with 9 students in grades 3 to 5? If our interventions were working, in my opinion, those numbers should be lower. So I started looking at the numbers, looking at my students. And what I noticed is that many of the students that I was working with in grades 3 to 5 were students who were new to the district. So students are moving in grades 3, 4, 5, or sometime after kindergarten, and they're coming behind. So all this work we're doing in K to 2 is great for the kids who stay with us. However, the new kids that come in, we're finding that they've fallen behind because they haven't been in our district to get that intervention, and they need support. So this chart shows that the red boxes show the number of students we would serve if students had not moved in. So they come to us, they need support, we provide them services. But if we take them out of the equation to see, are our K to 2 interventions working? If you look at those numbers, they show that they are. So the number of students served without move-ins, 19 K to 2 students as opposed to 22, 4 3 to 5 students as opposed to 9. So that's 5 students less on our caseload that we would be working with had those kids stayed with us or come to us in kindergarten. So I just thought that was kind of interesting to see those results. And then those catching up to or on or above grade level expectations early are also staying on grade level. So that's kind of what that's showing, that once we catch them up early, they get to 3 to 5, and they're okay. They've caught up to their peers, and they're able to maintain that. So I just put a little quote up there from Richard Allington. And it says, in the early grades, it's rare that a struggling reader is more than a year behind. But by 4th grade, 1 or 2 year lags are common. By 6th or 9th grade, 3 and 4 year lags in reading achievement are common. In these cases, it will usually require several years to catch up these struggling readers. So early intervention is key. So that's where our focus is. Hopefully it continues to work. And so that's our new philosophy.
Thank you, Maria. You're welcome. Sarah, are you presenting on math? Where's Sarah? Oh, and Abby Schenk. Sarah is our math coach for the district, and Abby is our math interventionist at Mount Vernon and Wayne.
So a lot of the ways that we, a lot of the data that, a lot of the numbers that Maria just shared with you are very similar for math in terms of some students are pulled out one-on-one, some students are pulled out in small groups, some students are worked with in the classroom. That all looks very similar with math. What you have in front of you on the first page is a document that the interventionists put together earlier in the fall that shows a flow chart of how we arrive at caseloads of students. A lot in the past, the board has often asked, well, who's not being served and what happens, how do you dismiss students? So they got together and created this flow chart to give you an idea of how these students come onto an interventionist caseload. We currently have a full-time interventionist in Manchester, a full-time interventionist in Reedfield, and one half-time interventionist in Mount Vernon and a half-time interventionist in Wayne. Abby is the half-time Mount Vernon and Wayne interventionist. So on the flow chart, you'll see that the first thing we do is look at NUIA data, and that's our universal screener. And that's not the only thing we use to determine caseloads. The teacher and the principal and the interventionists get together with that data along with common assessment data and other formative data that the teachers have gathered, and they talk about which students would be good fits for the interventionist caseload. They also have to consider the interventionist schedule and the makeup of different classes and which situations might be more beneficial to the interventionists coming into the classroom versus pulling students out. And then you'll see on the flow chart that they work with the students. The second page is there's no names on it, but it's an example of the full-time interventionist from Manchester shared with me that's how she tracks her students' progress. So you can see which grade levels she's seeing students in, and those are the standards the students are working on. And those are the grade level standards. So if she's pulling them out, she's usually working on the grade level before the standard that they're doing in their classroom, so we call it front loading, so that they're more successful with their grade level standards. So that's just one example. They all do it a little differently, but it's an example of how they would be tracking progress to see if what they're doing is working. And then we use the NUIA, we take the NUIA 3 times a year, so we just finished, we're not done yet, taking it in January, and that would be the other benchmark they look at to see if their common assessment data matches the growth they see or don't see on the NUIA since the fall. So what you'll notice on the data sheet you're looking at is those are grade level standards, so the student might not be meeting the grade level standard yet, but they're making progress, which sort of goes along with what Maria was saying, depending on how far behind they are. The interventionists might be making a lot of progress, but they might not be caught up yet, which is why you won't necessarily see all greens in the second column on the standards sheet. One of the questions that you've asked a lot in the past, and this is the third sheet, is how many students are not being served. You asked that last year, and so this year we tried to come up with that data for you. It's kind of a moving target because, for instance, and Maria touched on it, and we've been talking about looking at the same data at our next meeting. Since September 1st, 11 students have transferred to Manchester, 8 to Mount Vernon, 5 to Reedfield, and 1 to Wayne. That's a lot of kids to just be dropped off at your doorstep. We haven't seen the data for the NUIA from January yet, but the ones I did see for, let's say, the 11 at Manchester, so far I've seen 7 kids have completed the January NUIA, 7 of those 11. Of those 7, 5 are below the 35th percentile. So, and the others I don't know yet. That's a lot of kids to be dropped off at the door below the 35th percentile. Like Maria was saying, we haven't worked with them. They just come here, and now we have to work with them. And it's great, we do. But when you're looking at data, I think it's really important to consider those numbers. So the bar graph on the last page shows you. I asked the interventionist to tell me, they figured out how many students in the fall, because remember our January NUIA cycle is not done yet. So this is fall data. How many students in the fall were below the 35th percentile? And then of those students, how many are being seen? So the green will show you either the interventionist is seeing them, they might be special ed students, the interventionist might be pushing into their classroom, but they're sort of accounted for. Does that make sense? So the difference between the green and the blue are students that are not being seen, probably because, not all because of time. Sometimes there are situations where, for instance, a student might not, a parent might decline services, or a student might be so adamantly opposed to being seen that it's really not in the best interest to pull the student because it's more disruptive. So that difference isn't necessarily, there might be a few, kid or two in there that are anomalies, but for instance, in Mount Vernon, those kids are not being seen. Mount Vernon has almost, I think, twice the population of Wayne, and they receive the same intervention services. So that difference, that discrepancy is pretty straightforward. And the middle school, I believe, as well, has a chunk of kids, which I think Rick was going to talk about later, that aren't being able to be seen. So I'm hopefully that answers the question that you've asked in the past a little bit.
So, Sarah, when you say at the middle school, that's a pretty big gap between the blue and the green graph. Would you say that's about 25 kids that aren't able to be seen? And when you say aren't able to be seen, do you mean because we don't have enough help or enough interventionists?
We don't have enough interventionists. And the date, I love some of the things Maria presented. I thought, I should make slides about that. This is what we do at our interventionist meeting. We have more data,
Right.
we have tons of data, but sometimes it's about what are we looking for. Rick, I think do you know the specific number on that?
So Rick, why don't I introduce you? This is Rick Hogan, the principal of the middle school, and actually he's going to talk about the intervention. So is this a good segue into Rick?
Yep.
Okay. Never mind. Gary has a question.
I wasn't quite done.
Oh, one of the things I was going to say that's interesting, and it'd be interesting to make a slide like Maria did. We've only had math interventionists in our district since, Bridget? Let's see, Christine started the year after I did, and I've been here for 1 year longer than Donna, so.
6 years.
6 years, so that means we've had math interventionists for 5, I believe. Is that correct? 6 years. Okay, but the first year we only had 1 for 4 schools. The second year we had 2 for 4 schools. The third year, and now we have 2.5 for 4 schools. So you're seeing a lot of these
Right.
kids, what Maria was saying.
And you remember what I said to you that first year, right? Like, what's happening to these kids that
Yes.
aren't being serviced, right?
There
And
they
that's
are.
when we added a new interventionist. But my question, and maybe this is something that Mr. Hogan can answer, is these kids that aren't being serviced, that's a big number that's a big gap at the middle school, it seems, and in Reedfield, it looks, and in Mount Vernon, it seems like a big gap. But what happens to those kids when they're not being serviced by either RTI or special ed, and they're lagging behind in math or literacy? I think that's something the board might be, at least I know Gary's probably thinking the same question, right, Gary?
Back on the other page.
Oh, okay. I'm a page ahead of you.
How are you working with those teachers of those students?
Sure.
So one of the things that I know we do in Wayne, and I think they do in Reedfield too, is that they meet with the interventionist
And
and
Manchester.
Mr. Boston and Manchester, and periodically in Mount Vernon. We meet, the interventionist and the principal meet with the teachers, one at a time, and they look at the student data and they help develop, it's different in every school, but they help develop a tier 2 plan for students that might be falling behind or might be struggling. And we're still working on streamlining that process and being more effective with it, but that's something that we're working on, I know, at all of the elementary schools. So
It's become very fluid. For example, if a teacher and an interventionist meet in September and they decide, the teacher might say, this student is not going to be happy about being pulled out. They're not, they're really not ready for it. Can we meet again in a couple of weeks? Can you take this student? I'll work on developing a relationship with this one, and maybe you could work with this student, and then, and if you don't mind, could you come in my math class once a week and take a group, and then in a couple of weeks, maybe we could check in again on this student. It's really fluid. There's a lot of communication, which I think we've come a long way with. So they're definitely not abandoned. It's more of like okay, let's shuffle and see what we can do. I think there are some extreme situations, like Mount Vernon is pretty, they have a lot of kids and they only have a half-time person, and that's tough. And I think it sounds like the middle school, Rick's going to talk a little bit about the middle school, but.
Has the number on Mount Vernon increased? Or is this?
The number of students that need interventions, I think.
That the number of students who need intervention, has that increased, or is this what it has been over the years?
I think.
Because I thought that Mount Vernon had fewer at one point.
Way back,
Need.
when I was first teaching there, we'd have to look at the long-term data. I think that, Janet, is it fair to say the need has been pretty consistent?
Prior to when I started, they didn't have math interventionists there at all. And then for 1 year, they had like a quarter of a day, so they're really able to serve very few students. And then last year, the board supported adding a half-time interventionist, which has been great. And I'll talk more about the number of students that Abby's able to work with and how she works with in that push-in, pull-out model, and also the number of students on a waiting list, and how I would like to have a full-time one, but I'll save that for my presentation.
Gary, did you have a question?
Yes, so back on the prior page.
Sure.
It's clearly printed, did not improve.
Yes.
So it's obvious that the 5th grade, trying to go into the 6th grade, we're passing students on that don't make the benchmark and they should be held back.
So those students that did not improve weren't, I don't believe were on the caseload until, and now, or I think the interventionist was pushing into that class and they didn't improve enough. And so I believe now she's pulling them out. So yeah, they didn't make progress. I mean, this is real data. I'm not going to lie to you and say every kid that works with an interventionist improves.
So what I'm saying to you is that if we continue this process, by the time it gets to Conway, he has to fail overall. You understand what I'm saying as a principal? And you have to go back and look at the people that were involved, and you people are involved down here at the 5th grade, and if you're not doing your job, then we got to do something about it at this point, before they ever get to that point.
Well, we're trying,
Right.
Gary, but as Maria pointed out, when you get into 5th grade and you've been 3 levels behind, I mean, we're doing all we can, but unless you want to
So what
extend the school
happens if we
year.
hold some of those kids back? Or we make them go to summer school?
I'm not going to give you my personal.
I think the conversation tonight is it working, and are you lobbying for more interventionists?
Math, I mean, I've always said that you've been phenomenal about gradually increasing the support. I think it is working. And I think, like the numbers speak for themselves. I think we could always use more. I think what speaks to me is the Manchester full-time interventionist as of last year, Janet. When Erica and I talked, it was actually wonderful. She was able to account for every single kid. And I think the 2 that were in that missing space, she said they're on monitor. So,
Have you figured out I'm sorry.
I was going to say Janet's going to speak to that when she does her.
Yeah. I just have a quick question about the process of intervention. Have you figured out what to do if you're teaching someone something that they're behind on? Are they at the same time missing what is current, or do you pull them out at different times?
It's really hard. Scheduling is very tricky. I mean, there are things that are still really hard to navigate that are impacting progress. I mean, we don't want, typically, Maria, correct me if I'm wrong, a chunk of kids that receive math interventionists also receive literacy interventionists. You don't want to pull them from reading. You don't want to pull them from math. You really don't want to pull them from anything. So when do you see them? And then you've got one interventionist there for the day, so she's got to figure out how's she going to see all those kids without having them miss their regular. It's hard.
There's a lot of coordination involved.
It's very hard, and that's why we're sort of trying to do some push in and some more collaboration with classroom teachers, so that. But we're always learning.
I just want to remind the board, too, Sarah, I appreciate all the work that you've done over the years, and when you first started coming to see us, how much progress you made and how many interventionists you've been able to add. But I want to remind the board that when we think about this process, we have to, this is data for now, but each year is different with each set of children. So it doesn't necessarily mean that people aren't doing their jobs. It simply means that each kid is different, each goal each kid has is different, and their growth is different. So I said this at the last meeting, and if you can't get past that thought process, maybe it would help to sit down with Sarah in person and talk about it, so she can kind of explain to you how that works, because I've seen it work in my own family, and it's certainly, it's frustrating when your child doesn't have that growth mark, but it doesn't mean that the people that are working for us are not doing their jobs. And I just want to make sure that when we start talking about the budget and adding interventionists and so forth, that we really don't get wrapped around the axle when we're looking at these numbers.
Thank you, Missy.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yep.
Now I'd like to introduce Vic Hogan, who is the principal at the middle school, and he's going to share a little bit about intervention at the middle school.
This is really your first formal presentation before the board, isn't it?
It is.
It
Come to
is.
think of it, yes.
Good luck.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about RTI at the middle school. As far as what we work with and what we're trying to address, it's very similar to what the elementary schools are addressing as well in terms of literacy and math. The way we do it is different because the way we do it is different. Let's see if I get this a little closer. The way we do it is different because of the schedule, because of the way the middle school is set up, and for all the different factors that come into it. But we do have a math specialist for RTI, and we do have a literacy specialist. You were asking earlier what the number was on that bar. That number is actually 43, if you look at that, and I'll explain why in a minute. That's going to come up later as well in one of the other presentations that I have, that number. Currently, we have an RTI committee that gets together about every other week, going over the data. We use NWAs as a general screener. We've just started looking at iReady data this year, so we're trying to get a handle on what that means. We also use MEA data to see where the students have been in the past and where they are now. We try to keep those groups small. The way it works right now, it is totally pull-out. We're working with Tier 3, which are the kids that need small group, almost one-on-one or small group intervention. It's being done by both literacy and our math specialist. And we need to keep those groups small, usually between 5 to 8, in order for the instruction to really make a difference, in order to get those kids moving in the direction we want. Because of those small groups, we have the numbers, such as what I just shared, where even though those kids are falling below the 35th percentile, we can't accurately or can't effectively serve them through the RTI interventionists. And what that means is that we have to rely on the teachers in the classroom to really ramp up the differentiation, to really work with those students that aren't able to get a seat at RTI because of the limited number we have. I'll be addressing that, as I said, a little bit later, because that's a concern I have as far as how we're looking at it. We are starting to transition our RTI a bit. We're looking at more of a blended format, where we'll be leveraging some technology, specifically iReady, and some of the instruction that provides, but also leveraging it so that we can use smaller groups, more one-on-one with our interventionist, to try to accelerate the learning that those students need. I've been in a different district that uses the blended classroom for their RTI intervention. It works very well when done effectively, And I think it can make a big difference with the students we have, both math and literacy. So that's what we're looking at right now at the middle school. We currently have 23 students in our literacy group, and we have, at this point, 34 in our math group. And in literacy, what happens generally, we've been experimenting with the iReady. They do go on, they're doing about 20 minutes of reading. They do about 20 minutes of iReady intervention, and then they're doing 20 minutes of direct instruction. Not necessarily in that order. One of the things about having those many different things going on is that our interventionists can work one-on-one or with a couple of students at a time, rather than working with the whole group at once. Again, we're trying to accelerate their learning as quickly as we can, knowing that they're behind at least typically 2 grade levels. And those results, basically, each student sets goals with the interventionist that they're working on throughout the trimester. Those goals are revisited at the end of the trimester. Those results are shared with the RTI committee, and then every trimester it's determined which students have reached the level where they're doing at the standard, where they're reaching the standard, and which students that aren't in the program currently can be moved in. And as I said, we try to keep those groups between 5 to 8 students per class. Yes?
So of those 43 kids that are not being served in RTI right now, is that just math RTI?
That's just math,
Okay.
yes. We have 77 students.
How many not being served in literacy, do you know?
Literacy, actually, we have open spots with the literacy. So right now, we're able to service the kids we need in literacy. Math right now is my concern.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rick. And do you have a question?
His numbers don't add up. You said 43, right?
Just for math.
For math.
For math. You just
No.
told me 34.
That are being serviced.
34 serviced and 43 are not, 77 total.
Not being serviced. 34 are being serviced.
Right. I haven't seen the graph.
This here is only up to 5th grade, I believe.
that's an elementary.
Okay.
So you have no paperwork whatsoever when you made this presentation?
I was notified probably 10 minutes before this meeting that I had to do this presentation, so I do not.
We'll send you a memo next time.
That would be great. I don't blame you. I do too. But I would be happy to provide whatever the board needs. I'd be happy to.
Well, what bothers me is that 43 all that you're serving, 6, 7, and 8.
Mm-hmm.
How many at the 8th grade are you passing on
Passing on in terms of,
with no service?
well, if you look at our numbers of that 77, if
I
you,
can't
if,
look at your numbers. You did nothing.
it's true.
Okay.
But if
Please
you
tell me
look,
what the numbers are now.
if I talk about the numbers and describe them, what you would see is right now with the number of students, our numbers from 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade are decreasing. Right now we have 43 students in the 6th grade of that 77. We have 22 at the 7th grade. We have 12 at the 8th grade. So as they're progressing through the middle school, we are seeing less and less students needing that RTI service. And that's where we want to be.
Yeah,
Yes.
I look forward to the day where by 3rd grade, everyone is on track and just goes straight.
That would be nice.
It would be.
And then we won't need
Yeah, Sean?
interventions.
How many kids are in the middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade?
Right now we're at 281.
So a third of the kids.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, I'm going to address those numbers too as far as MEA results later on in terms of what we're looking at with math. And yeah, right now it's about a third, but there are other things I want to share with that too.
So a third of the kids, but you say majority of the, so the numbers decrease, so 6th, 7th, 8th, my understanding, that majority, the largest numbers in the 6th grade.
Right now, yes.
So maybe they'll want to look at something in the 4th and 5th grade.
It's possible. I need to look a little bit closely at what those kids were doing before they got to us. I haven't looked at that, to be quite honest, as far as what those numbers were last year. But I do know that is our biggest piece. And regardless, we're going to take the students that we have walking through the door every year in 6th grade and make sure that those numbers are decreasing as they go.
No, I'm not arguing that point, but I guess
Sure.
the point is, you might want to look at, if they're not meeting 6th grade math standards.
Oh, yeah.
I know that's not your issue, but thinking the overall broader conversation.
Well, it is, because I think we're, as a district-wide piece, and the middle school is part of the district, we need to look at how we're servicing all the kids. So,
Thanks.
So this year at the high school, the 9th grade the teachers have formed a team in order to better sort of keep an eye on the students as they move through the year. And I've attended some of those team meetings, and it's pretty amazing. They go down student by student, sharing information, data about each and every student, and all of the 9th grade teachers participate. So Chris St. Clair is going to start tonight. She is the new literacy specialist at the high school. She was at our middle school, and she's going to talk about her part in the team. Thank you, Chris.
So it is a new position to the high school, so we've had to kind of create. We came in with a plan and thought something would work, and when we started working with the kids, we had to completely change our plan. So it's different from the middle school. So I view my role overall is to increase student skills and self-perception. I'm providing I'm providing hopefully a lot of support for staff. We're examining data and making decisions based on the data. And then I'm also collaborating with staff with the Freshman Academy, which you'll hear from in a minute or two, the RTI team, as well as the administration. Instead of using the NWEA data, we realized that in the high school, what the kids really need to be able to do is read and understand information. So instead of using the NWEA data to inform how our interventions would work, we instead used one of the reading standards for informational text. And the goal was that they need to summarize the text at the level 3, the meat. They need to effectively relate key ideas and important details without interjecting opinions. So what we had the kids do in the first 2 weeks of school was that we gave them 2 chances to read an informational article and independently write a summary. And the results were surprising, and we had to do a lot of digging to kind of figure out what they meant and how to work with them. So the result of that first assessment showed that 18% of the incoming freshmen were proficient with this skill, 47 were partially proficient, and 35% were not proficient. So as a result of this, we realized the first thing we needed to do was to provide the kids with really clear expectations. We realized maybe they just did not understand what we were expecting them to do. So instead of trying to work with, 92% of the students individually, I went into classrooms. So I coordinated with the global teacher, and I took over his classes for 2 days and went in, had the kids analyze their own work. So they had to analyze the differences between the different proficiency levels. They had to identify strengths and weaknesses in their own work, and then they had to take that previous assessment and revise it now that they had clear expectations. The results of that were much better. So we went from 18% proficient to 28% proficient, and 35% not proficient to 9% not proficient. So I then took those 9% of students and I began to work with them. But we realized we had a huge chunk of kids at that level 2. They were almost there, but not quite. So I went into the classroom again. And what we realized is the kids were either looking at really big ideas or really minute details. They weren't putting the whole piece together. So what I did, I went into the classroom, I did some lessons on what's called text structure, how the author organizes their information, and had the kids work again with their own work. I had them record their progress on their previous assessments, set some goals. They each created an individual plan, And then those 9% who repeatedly showed they just were not proficient, I worked with them either one-on-one or two-on-one for probably about 5 or 6 sessions. All right, so that's what I did. The results of the next assessment were much better. There was about a 3-week time between assessments. So what we were able to do is move a lot of those partially proficient students, and this is the whole grade. So I went in and worked with about 90 students and moved a chunk of the partially proficient students into the proficient level. But we still had 58% not proficient. So what I did next was there were about 38 students, and I pulled them in small groups from across all levels of ability and met with them in small groups and used their own work and had them create what would be, a level 4 summary. They really quickly identified for themselves what they were lacking. So instead of me telling them what they needed to do, they figured it out on their own. They kind of owned their errors, and most of the students were really thankful for the clear instruction and the clear support. So we did this one more time. This was the 3rd time that we did this. And we have now 63% of the students, the freshmen, independently proficient at being able to read information and pull out the big ideas and pull out the supporting details that they need. The 36% that are almost there, I'm going to continue to work with and monitor in the classroom. If it's a specific assignment I know that's coming up, I will work with them in small groups or one-on-one, and we're going to kind of get to those students through their writing, because they're now being asked to use what they're reading to write about. So I will work with them that way.
How much of your work would be benefited by maybe some differentiated instruction in the classroom?
And I will get to that. I have been doing that also. Huge, a lot. All right, so this is just another way to look at the same data. So the first 2 columns were the first chance that they got, and you can see there was quite a bit of red. The next one was when I went in and did 1 intervention in the full class. I don't have the cursor. The white blank, I was kind of keeping track. Were kids absent? Were kids not engaged in the lesson, despite anything that I could do to engage them? That's what the stars are. So you can see that affects the students. They need to be there and they need to be ready to learn. I believe, who was it? A couple of people mentioned, if students just aren't ready for the interventions, it's not the right setting for them. So in the last column of dates are the times that I met with those small groups, and every time that I did meet with a student, their score went up. So that was good to see. This is just another way to look at the same data. So the top graph is the number of students. So we started out with 14 students proficient and moved all the way up to 50 students proficient. And it was about 78 or 79 students who took this each time. And the bottom is the percentile, so 18% proficient up to 63%. So one of the greatest things, students have been really thankful. Some of the students who, I know all of these kids from the middle school, maybe were a little not as thankful of my support as middle school students. Now that they've gotten to the high school and they realize how valuable these skills are, they've really, truly been thankful for my support. They themselves have improved self-perceptions of their abilities. A lot of these kids doubted. They didn't think they could do this work. They didn't think they were capable. And they're seeing their results of their effort and their hard work. And students are increasingly more engaged in their own learning. There's quite a few students who, when they got their scores back, they were so proud of their 3s and their level 4s. And as I'm in quite a few of the classrooms quite frequently, collaborating and co-teaching, and if they receive a 3 or a 4 on something they've done in class, they're running up to me, or waving their papers. They're really proud of their improvements. The kids finished the literacy NWEA yesterday. So this is brand new data. It's not, you don't have a copy of this. And it was great to see that just the freshmen on the NWEA, 91%, according to NWEA data, are either average or above average with their reading skills. So all of the work that's been happening up to this point is catching up, and the kids really are making the gains. So the next steps, continuing to use the data that we have to make decisions about how to work with kids. Continuing to meet with freshmen. I'm going to focus now on argument writing. They've got to be able to gather the data and then turn and write about it. So that seems to be their next weakness, which is, it's a harder skill. It's freeing me up with the 91% proficient with the reading. It's freeing me up to then work with sophomores, and then I'll keep moving up the grade levels. And I'm also I have time to collaborate with the classroom teachers and co-plan and go into classrooms and plan those activities that would create the differentiation in the classroom. All right, does anyone have any questions?
Chris, these students experienced a change in standards as they were coming up through the grades. They really didn't hit Common Core standards until somewhere in the school years, so they didn't have experience with argument writing and necessarily with informative writing just because those weren't part of the old standards. So to what degree do you think we're seeing students having issues in middle school and high school because of just not having that type of education coming up through?
So this is purely anecdotal. The freshmen really understand the structure. They understand how to put together the argument. Where they're lacking now is the development and the craft of writing. So the higher level, they have the evidence, how to connect the evidence back to the claim and the thesis. So the freshmen really have a pretty solid understanding of argument. From talking to the teachers at the upper grade levels, they don't have as solid because they haven't had the instruction that the current freshmen have had. Any other questions? Okay.
Thanks, Chris. I believe Kelsey Tufethan, who's also a member of the 9th grade team. Kelsey is a math teacher. Patricia Morris is with her.
Thank you.
So my goal is to essentially just give you kind of a broader overview of what Freshman Academy really is. It's new this year, you probably know that. So we've been doing a lot of work with RTI, so that's incorporated with this, but this is just kind of like the scope. So when we first met at the beginning of the year, even in the summer, we set some goals for this semester and throughout the school year that we wanted to meet, so we can kind of identify those now. One was to allow collaboration and opportunities and track student information. I think that happened naturally already throughout this building and for the freshmen, but we kind of wanted to just like formalize it and give it more of a purpose, so we were able to do that. We wanted to coordinate and share with RTI. We knew working with RTI would be huge, so that was a definite goal we had. We wanted to increase passing rates, who doesn't? And we wanted to decrease disciplinary referrals, which I think we knew might initially come with an increase in disciplinary referrals. We wanted to increase student engagement and kind of encourage that lifelong learner mentality. And we wanted to develop and identify some essential skills that these freshmen really needed to have mastered before they moved on to their sophomore year. And I think a big picture was to just kind of ease that transition up to the high school. We always talk about how there's only a driveway between the middle school and the high school, but it's really a big difference once you get up here, and a big difference in the atmosphere. And we also wanted to align our cross-disciplinary expectations. What I expected in my classroom, we wanted to be the same in all the other classrooms. The outcomes that we've noticed so far, we've had earlier interventions. Just about after every meeting, we had several action steps that we put into play immediately to get our students on the right track. We had co-teaching opportunities. You heard Chris talk about being in some of the other classrooms, and you'll hear Colette talk about her experiences, and she's hopefully going to be joining my classroom next semester. We did identify common expectations, both academically and behaviorally. We've had at least a meeting every week for an entire period, and next semester we're going to be starting to meet more than one. And we have better documentation. Chris showed you some of those. We are tracking student engagement, and we're tracking their grades, and we're tracking all sorts of things. Their behavior, their interventions, all the referrals along the way, all the steps that take them to get to where they are now. And the student focus has really transitioned into a standard focus, and I think a lot of that came from our own conversations around standards, just kind of translated right into our classrooms. Their language even changed into a standards-based language. And they have buy-in to their own education. Once they started talking about the standards, it was kind of like they could identify more with where they were and where they wanted to be, and felt kind of more purposeful. A huge piece of this has been collaboration, and we've talked about kind of collaboration versus calibration and kind of how those are similar and important. We developed a common language. We actually, in our most recent meeting, we were comparing argument writing in all of our courses and the different words we use, and had this great discussion about if all the words we use should be the same and how that would benefit our students, but also maybe not benefit them if they weren't used to being exposed to different words. We had a common skill set, so skills that were identified in one class were easily translated into the next class. And we're able to share successes. I think it can be difficult sometimes when you're talking about these students who are struggling, but when they have that moment when we all got to sit in that room together and be like, yeah, they did it, that was always exciting and uplifting. We had consistent expectations in all our classes, and what stemmed out of that was consistent consequences. So when something happened in one class, the consequence was the same in the next class. And we had support for staff, and I think with that, the next bullet is support for all students. When we're supporting each other, it's just a natural outcome that all our students are supported. So I've heard this question repeatedly, that you want to know how many students aren't being served or are being served. So when it comes to Freshman Academy, each freshman is being served. About every other week, we probably mention that specific student's name. This is an example of a tracking sheet that we have. Every freshman is listed on it, and all of their courses and the grade that they have for that course, and it's updated every week before the meeting. And so we can quickly scan this. We color-coded it automatically, so if a student is not passing a class, it'll pop up in red, and different things like that. So we can easily tell if a student is starting to slip. Our next steps, I'm really excited about these. By having an additional meeting, we're hoping we'll have more time to combine our best practices, like instructional strategies, and also our pedagogy. We'll have more collaborative planning. I can't tell you how valuable it is to not only have planning time with my department, but like vertical planning time with other departments, so that we can have, I think every teacher dreams about like doing co-curricular stuff, but like having time to make that happen can be difficult. We're gonna have more data-informed decision-making, and hopefully more coordination and collaboration with next year's teachers, so all the work we're doing carries over into sophomore year. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey and team. And now Colette Jardis is our math interventionist at the high school. You have to talk into it for the.
But you still have to?
filming.
Okay, I didn't want to be too loud in this, because I know I'm loud. Teacher voice. So my name's Colette Jadis. Thanks, everyone, for allowing us to come and present to all of you today. This is awesome. So I'm at the high school. This has now been a full year for me. I started last year in November. So it really is just over a full year. My role has been collaborating with students, staff, and parents. My role is also to help build student confidence. It is working with students one-on-one, one-to-one, and also in small groups. And I am overseeing a couple of the online math programs that we're using at the high school, which is ALEX, and then a district program called iReady that our middle school principal talked about, so I can share a little bit about that. And then collaboratively building standards-based assessments and the scales that go with them. So a couple things. So Sarah Caban and I got together at the beginning of the summer and the end of the summer, and we came up with who I'd be working with this year. So I did start with a caseload of about 22 students. They were scheduled into the math lab. We started working really just good, fun math stuff to get them excited about being there. As the semester has gone along, not only have I worked with those kids, I've also pulled in a few other kids from getting teacher referrals. So I've started to work on specific high school math standards with different students. Usually when I start working with a student, they are typically at a 1 or a 2. It's either they're not there yet at all, or they got something to bring to the table. After I work with them, typically, and this is going off of common assessment data, they've either reached partially proficiency, 40%, and about 60% of my kids reached full proficiency on these different standards. The iReady is something we're using for differentiation. So Nancy Harriman brought this up. We targeted the transition math class. These are the kids that really are lower on the NUIA scores. They've really, they've got some foundational deficits in there. We thought the iReady would be great since it's K-8. It would target specific skills, and it's differentiating for each one individually. So what you see up here, and this is just one student data. So you can see at the top part, if you look under the bands, it has number and operations, algebraic thinking, and so on. This young lady tested out in 2 of the bands. So therefore, she's not working on any of those standards. She's now focusing on some algebraic thinking and some geometry strands. And again, these are from K-8. This student, I have to tell you, and it's anecdotal, but she was so not engaged. She had a lot of health issues. She was not going to classes, none of her classes. And she is just a shining star right now. She is using the iReady. She's engaged in her math class and her other classes. And it's just a pleasure to see this young lady smiling every day, coming to my door. Do you want me here? Of course. Get in here. So that's the iReady. I will say down the bottom, so you can see just barely, but it kind of cut off. So when she goes in, it will tell how she's doing. Is she passing? Is she not? And then she keeps going. And I will work with her on this as well. I just don't leave her on the computer alone. I try to get in there so we can talk it out, talk the math, do it together, and grow. Thank you. Looking at the NUIA data this year, so the caseload that Sarah and I came up with, most of the kids on my caseload were below or equal to the 35th percentile, but not everybody was. So the numbers are going to look a little weird here. But so right now, from the 9th and 10th grade, 34 students in total scored less than or equal to the 35th percentile. Of those students, I'm working with 16, even though other ones are on my caseload, they're just not in that data. So the 16 that I've worked with, 8 of them passed, and well, not passed, but met their overall growth rate. 5 of them showed growth in algebraic skills, which is interesting because they're in algebra. So it makes sense that they're growing in that band of the NUIA instruction. 1 showed growth in a different band, the real and complex numbers. And then one, she didn't meet her growth target at all, but I'll tell you, this girl is kicking butt in her math class with an A, and she's just an awesome young lady. And then one student is brand new to the district. Of the other 18 students, 4 had refused to work with me for the first semester, and that was either they refusing or their parents or grandparents refusing. They're still on my radar though, so just I see them in the hallway and I check in and I welcome them anytime. 3 have moved into the district during this school year alone. The 11, they're gonna now be reviewed for future services for next semester. This is a new thing too. Chris told you about what she did with all the 9th graders and giving them the argument, the writing assessments. And I thought from math, you know, even though there are many high school math standards, but throughout every math standard, they really do have to have an understanding of number sense. And one of the parts to number sense is fractions. And a lot of times kids get through algebra geometry, and by the time they get to algebra 2, they are struggling big time. So my team, the math team, Sarah, supported me and helped me create a fraction assessment, which we gave to all 9th graders. And so that is something we're gonna be doing in the next 2 weeks, is looking at that data, seeing what comes up, and what kids are gonna need what services to get them comfortable with fractions. You know, they're taught fractions as we, you know, in elementary, and then we don't really teach it again in its entirety. And I'm just a big believer that sometimes you have to reteach things. Sometimes you have to relearn things and look at them with a older brain, so to speak. So I'm very excited to do this. Continuing next steps, collaborating with the district math coach and other interventionists and math teachers to determine the priorities. Like Kelsey said, I'm going to be co-teaching with her in the Algebra 1 class during G7, so I can help her and work with more students within the classroom, and then have a great rest of the school year with students that I work with. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Colette.
That's it with interventions? Well, for all of you visitors here this evening, you can see how interesting it can get. So we're ready to move on. Missy's going to get the sign-in sheet, and then I will read names. But as I said when I called this meeting to order, the proceedings here are being videotaped and will be available via YouTube through the Marana Cook Area Schools website. Last year, they also broadcast our meetings at various times during the week on cable TV that is available to Time Warner subscribers from Reedfield and Manchester on Channel 7, I think. I think this is the perfect opportunity for members of our 4 communities to get information on what has been happening with regard to the air quality issues at the Manchester Elementary School. There has been a lot of media coverage of this issue in the past week, including in the Kennebec Journal with Channel 6 and Channel 8. It is hard to get a whole picture in a 20-second camera interview or a news article where quotes are incomplete. I want to take this opportunity to review what the district has done in addressing this problem and tell you about our more immediate plans moving forward. The summary of what we've done is the timeline that many of you heard at our meeting at the Manchester Elementary School last Wednesday night, but I think it's instructive to review it one more time for people who weren't at that meeting. On October 24th, the school nurse in Manchester emailed the Director of Operations and Maintenance, Kurt Morse, saying that there was a problem with a bad smell in the basement. So that problem was identified. And the next day, Mr. Morse investigated and removed moldy computer bags from the basement because that was the obvious smell. But it didn't improve the smell of the basement, so a few days later, on approximately October 31st, Mr. Morris made a phone call to Indoor Air Quality Council on the state homepage. They advised the district to contact a qualified testing company and cleaning company. They also recommended several sources of information on mold. That same day, Mr. Morris contacted Air Quality Management. The next day, November 1st, Air Quality Management requested the floor plan with areas for testing. And 2 days later, Air Quality Management did the testing. Mr. Morris, or may I call you Kurt, was on vacation, and he had requested that if there was any danger, Air Quality Management should contact him. No one contacted him. On November 15th, we received the first air quality report. On November 17th, Kurt returned from vacation and spoke with Randy from Air Quality Management, who said there was no immediate reason to act and recommended remediation during the school break with no risk anticipated. And I put that in quotes, no risk anticipated. So on November 21st, Kurt met with ServPro, which is a cleaning service. On November 22nd, they submitted their first quote, and we realized that by policy, we needed to put it out to bid because it was going to be more than $5,000. After the Thanksgiving holiday, on November 29th, the first letter was sent out to parents, staff, and the RSU board via email. And this letter described what was going to be happening in the school over Christmas break. On December 1st, the bids went out for remediation. On December 15th, the bid was awarded to Octagon. 3 bids were received, reviewed. It appeared that they had the plan for the most effective cleanup. Even though they were the most expensive plan, that's the plan that was chosen. On December 12th, the first air quality report was sent to the Manchester Elementary School. On December 13th, representatives from Air Quality Management and Octagon met with staff in Manchester to explain the remediation process. And then the remediation occurred between December 19th and December 30th, and I understand that the only day that they took off was Christmas Day during that time. On December 28th, after the first remediation, there was an air quality test done in one of the classrooms that wasn't good enough. Apparently, something had been stirred up in the classroom and the mold spore levels rose, so they redid the remediation. Then they did a second test. And then on December 30th, we received confirmation of safety from the Air Quality Management. On January 3rd, the final air quality report was received. We had another letter go to parents, and then we had the meeting last Wednesday night with parents where we tried to answer questions. So there was a lot to do in a short period of time, and we took advantage of the Christmas break in order not to disrupt classes. As many of us in this room now know, addressing mold is tricky because it is everywhere in the natural environment, and no agreed upon standards have been set to determine what levels are acceptable and what levels are dangerous to our health and safety. Although the level for fungus in the air outside of the school building was higher than any classroom inside the building, we not only remediated the identified mold problem in the basement of the school, we contracted with Octagon to thoroughly clean the classroom near the basement, with particular attention to those hard-to-clean surfaces. Subsequent air quality testing indicates that these rooms are now safe. Recommendations by air quality management based on the air quality tests included enlisting the services of a certified, qualified mold remediation company, identifying, repairing, and controlling moisture intrusion sources, ensuring the area is clean and dry to prevent recurrent damage and microbial influences, detail cleaning all surfaces in the affected areas, and permanently dehumidifying the basement, all of which have been done. I am convinced that we identified the problem, sought the help and recommendation of experts, and followed their advice, all in a timely and thorough fashion. In addition, we went above and beyond what was recommended, testing the 3 additional nearby classrooms, all of which tested acceptable. So what are the next steps, you may ask? We have agreed to test additional rooms throughout the school to ensure the school is safe. The testing will occur tomorrow, and we will have the test results available for parents as we did before at the school office. If we are informed that there is a danger to students, we will notify parents, and we will work on plans to move students to alternate locations. At the present time, there are rooms available at the Reedfield Elementary School and at the Marana Cook Middle School. We plan to do whatever is necessary to meet the health and safety needs of the students. I received, as a public comment, so now that portion of our agenda is beginning, an email from Doug Ide. He's a resident in Manchester. I think his first child graduated from Marana Cook last year, and he has a daughter, I think, who's a freshman this year. He was on the school board for 6 years, and now he is a selectman in the town of Manchester. He sent me an email and said, feel free to read it at the meeting if you think it provides some balance. So I'd like to read Doug's email to you, and then you won't have to listen to me too much longer. He says, I read the article in the KJ and saw the report on WCSH regarding the mold issues at Manchester Elementary School. I was also added to the private Facebook group that has been set up to discuss this issue, and I've read all the posts in it. I've also talked with a few people with kids in the school and others who have information about what has gone on. I won't be able to attend this Wednesday's school board meeting, but I gather some folks are planning to speak about the issue. If I were to attend, here's what I'd say. I have complete faith that all of our staff, faculty, and administration always strive to do what is in the best interests of our students and their families. I would be shocked to learn that anyone working in our schools would willfully violate the trust we have placed in them, either by ignoring a problem, not communicating appropriately about a problem, or engaging in any kind of cover-up. A discussion of this problem should start from a point of trust and respect while learning about the facts and timeline of each situation. A rush to judgment is a shortcut to the dead end of reactive anger. The conversation never advances. Only open and honest communication that gives the benefit of the doubt until solid evidence for real doubt emerges can work to resolve an issue. I would urge everyone to discuss this issue respectfully, calmly, and openly, and to be willing to listen and ask questions so that a sound judgment can be made. Since we all know our children are watching, we should all model behavior that shows them the power of this approach. Back to me. I hope that throughout the citizens' comment section of our meeting, we can follow his advice and remember that we are modeling behaviors for our children as they watch us and listen to us. It would be inappropriate and out of order to disparage anyone in the administration or staff in an open meeting, and if necessary, I will ask people to sit down. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. although obviously I went a little longer and I might allow you to in certain circumstances. I thank you all for coming. I'm going to read your names and ask you to come up to the microphone so we can all hear what you have to say. Thank you. Stephanie Garofalo.
Hello. First, I would like to thank the school board for granting us this meeting and taking the time to listen to our concerns and requests. I would also like to thank the parents and community members that are present and or have reached out on this issue. It makes me very proud to be part of such a caring and active community. My name is Stephanie Garofalo, and I'm going to present this from a parent's perspective. I have 2 children currently at Manchester Elementary, one in pre-K and one in first grade. The timeline and the way that this situation were communicated are very important to me. On October 24th, we learned that Jada emailed. On November 3rd, the testing was done, and the school received the report on November 15th. It should have been at this time that this issue was addressed to parents with the report sent out in an email attachment, but we didn't receive it at that time. We received it in a letter on November 29th, which was 14 days after the school was aware of this issue. And in this letter, it stated there was mold that would be remediated in the basement, but that the classrooms above were just dusty and that the air quality was at a safe level. It said nothing in this letter about a report being available for parents. I passed this letter off as I had no cause for concern. I'm in those classrooms just about every day to drop off and pick up my kids, and I volunteer, and they seem fine to me, albeit a little dusty. It wasn't until December 16th that I learned that I could ask for a report, and when I looked at it, I still had no cause for concern. Well, I found out that it was missing a page, and not just any page, it was the most important page where it stated that there was mold and how much mold was in those classrooms, the classrooms that my child was sitting in. So there was all this time when I could have been advocating to get my daughter out of the classroom. My daughter who was sent to get chest x-rays in September for wheezing. My daughter who started coughing in the beginning of November and has coughed for over 2 months despite medications. My daughter who was in perfect health before this school year and now she's having asthma symptoms. Mold spores are known to float through the air and travel on surfaces. A woman named Carol from Anson called me today after reading the newspaper article and said she has been through this exact issue herself at her place of employment. Even after she was moved out of the building, she continued to suffer due to the fact that her work documents were covered with mold spores. Mold affects everyone differently, and that fact alone can be dangerous. The safe level that wasn't affecting some of the kids could have been affecting others. And I'm not going to list my requests because I appreciate that you've already met all of them, and for that I'm thankful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next, Jenny Kingsbury.
Good evening. My name is Jenny Kingsbury. I have 2 children at Manchester Elementary School. I am also the president of our parent-teacher community organization. We, as a group of parents, have established some requests. Our first request is to create an oversight committee, including parent, teachers, and staff, so that all information is communicated to everyone from this point forward in a timely and transparent manner, and not only via email. Secondly, we want to know as parents that the occupants of the school, their health and safety is of utmost concern, and how the potential risks are minimized. We would like to be supplied with the appropriate details of project goals, findings, and activities. And we would like to see a mechanism in place for open, ongoing two-way dialogue between school officials and the affected groups or individuals, including a means for the occupants of the school to share their observations and theories about problems and potential patterns. We would like to see repeat air and surface testing in the basement, in both first grade classrooms, Mrs. Gurney and Mrs. Johnson, in the kindergarten classroom, Mrs. Holman. 30 days after the last testing, which would be on or around the 30th of this month. We would like to see the carpets tested in those classrooms because that has not yet been done. We would like to see initial air, surface, and carpet testing in the entire school, all rooms at Manchester Elementary School. And then remediation and cleaning as dictated by those testing results. We would like to see that there's a commitment to immediately test and treat any area in the school if there is any concern of air quality raised by a parent, teacher, or a student. We would like to see the carpeting in the school removed during the summer and replaced with flooring. We would like to see a detailed maintenance schedule for not only our school, but for the district, and for that to be shared with parents. And that plan would work to improve and maintain the safety through preventative maintenance rather than simply reacting when there's a problem. We would like to see a copy of the insurance claim that was reportedly submitted. And we would like to see replacement of the items that have been discarded from the basement with priority given to those items that are necessary to fulfill teacher and student educational needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Vicki McMullen?
Hi, my name is Vicki McMullen, and I am the building representative for the Teachers Association. And I was asked to mention, because some of the staff were concerned after the meeting last Thursday, that some of the parents were questioning if the teachers were concerned and if the teachers were reporting any issues that happened. One thing that was brought to my attention was that in 2015, one of the teachers was concerned about the smell in her classroom, one of the first grade classrooms, and she was having frequent headaches, so she purchased an air quality test and placed it in her classroom. There were moles. Moles that grew within a couple of days grew in these air quality tests, and this was brought up and it was passed on, and I know from talking to her that it went as far as not the current maintenance director, but the maintenance director at that time was made aware of it, and nothing really happened from that. Also, I'd like to talk about my own personal experience. On October 25th, one of the first grade teachers, the door was open going downstairs to the basement because the janitor was bringing stuff up from the basement. The teacher called me over as I was walking by and asked me if I had noticed a strong odor in that area as of lately. I have respiratory problems, I have asthma, and I'm allergic to mold. And I said, no, I haven't, but, you know, I'll go downstairs and see if I smell, you know, if anything bothers me, because if it's going to bother anybody, it's going to bother me. Within probably 15 seconds of walking down to the bottom of the stairs, I started having an asthma attack, even though I use a cortisone inhaler twice a day, so my asthma is pretty much under control. As soon as I came upstairs, I found my rescue inhaler, used that. As soon as my asthma was under control, Janet wasn't in the building at that time. I emailed her. She forwarded my email to Kurt. And that day, later that day, Kurt came to the basement, and that's when he found the moldy cases. And he talked to me, and he said that he was going to get someone to come in and get the air tested. And so I just wanted parents to know that when teachers do notice things, they do report that.
Thank you. Robin Holman.
Hello, I'm Robin Holman. I've been a teacher here at Manchester Elementary School for 22 years. I've been in the district for 24. The last 4 years in the room that I'm above the basement, my experience has been that I open the windows daily. At lunchtime, I have to air the room out. And now we know that we needed to clean the dust. And it's been just a foggy space for me. But since the cleaning, I've noticed a significant difference. So I want to share that. There has been a difference. But still, regarding the cleaning, I wonder about the ear quality. Like, how's the ear moving in that classroom? Because I cannot teach in the classroom without keeping the door open. And I know I always have to keep the door open. I have to open the windows. It has changed, but I just question the efficiency of the supply, return, ear. How's it all working in our classrooms? Regard to the cleaning, there were a lot of chemicals used to clean. So as we look to clean the building and make sure it is safe for our children in terms of mold and dust, we also can be impacted by the chemicals that are used. So that was a big impact for me. I had adverse effect to that. 4 children in my classroom had burning noses, headaches. 2 staff members had headaches. So as we look forward to cleaning and making sure things are right, we also want to look at, I think you need to be a chemist to know all the stuff that could be combined when they're all coming together in that regard. This year I've had I feel an unusually high rate of sickness in my classroom. It doesn't mean that, when you're teaching young children, you think, you get sick, you have colds a lot. But I have children with vulnerable immune systems, asthma, coughs, and I've averaged 2 children out every day since school started. I have not had a full classroom of children since school started. The staff at school, our speech and language therapist is laryngitis for 2 years consecutively, and she's just wondering too, this is new for her, why is all this happening? I feel that you've done a wonderful job at helping our students. I know we all want our students safe, but I also want you to know that my experience in that classroom has often been something doesn't feel right. Thank you.
My neighbor, Jenny Galetta.
Hi, my name is Jenny Galetta. I've been teaching at Manchester Elementary School for 19 years. I'm a member of the community of Manchester. My children also went to school there. Something else I'd like you to know about me is I'm a competitive athlete. I'm a long-distance runner, and I've had no health issues my entire life until May of last year. Beginning in May of last year, I developed a cough that wouldn't go away. I'd seen the doctor. They had tried different cough syrups, different things to help this cough that wouldn't go away. I attributed it to, a virus, just regular cough sort of things, until the day that I was warming up with a group of friends to go for a run. I coughed and my airway completely sealed, completely closed off. I couldn't breathe. And for any of you that have had any sort of issues with breathing like that, it's terrifying. I immediately went to the doctor. They attributed it to possible bronchial spasms due to the irritation of the cough and gave me a rescue inhaler to use when I had symptoms. They thought maybe it was attributed to exercise-induced with the airway being irritated by the cough. So I took that. I used the inhaler. Didn't really help, but I was following the doctor's orders. Until Memorial Day weekend, when I awoke in the middle of the night, in the middle of an attack. I was completely at rest. My airway was completely closed off. I had to be rushed to the emergency room, and that began a long journey of tests, x-rays. I had an EKG. I had a whooping cough test. I'd had some kids in the classroom that had been diagnosed with whooping cough, so I had that test. That was negative. I had something called a spirometry, where they basically look at your breathing through the computer. Everything came back negative. The doctors were mystified. I was on a rescue inhaler, a steroid inhaler, number of different medications. They gave me antibiotics in case there was some sort of infection they couldn't see. I had to have an emergency plan in the classroom in case I had an attack in front of the children. So I had to be very blunt with the children and say, I'm having trouble breathing, and if this happens, this is what we need to do. One of you needs to go and get some help, needs to go and needs to get the nurse, go next door and have the teacher call the nurse. Thankfully, that never happened. I saw a pulmonologist, analyzed all my tests, couldn't see anything wrong with me. Until finally I went to an allergist on September 8th. And he said, the reason you're having this isn't your lungs, it's your vocal cords. He diagnosed me with a condition called vocal cord dysfunction. which basically is what I was experiencing when I would have an attack. My vocal cords would completely seal shut, completely closing off my airway. There's no reason to figure out how or why it happens, but I still continue to have episodes. Thankfully, with the help of our speech therapist, just 2 doors down from me, the wonderful Shannon Cole, she's helped me with literature about this disorder, about breathing techniques that help me. But I still continue, although the episodes are less and less severe, I still continue to struggle with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Michelle Bragg.
Hello. My name is Michelle Bragg. I requested the meeting last week with the superintendent, and as you know, I requested the opportunity to meet with the board to further discuss this issue. My son Joshua is a first grader at Manchester Elementary. For the record, my husband and I support the list of requests submitted by Jenny Kingsbury and the list that will be forthcoming from Darcy Freeman on behalf of the PTCO. As you may have seen here tonight, there is much angst and concern about the well-being of our children and our teachers. But we must be clear, this is not about anyone trying to intentionally harm our children. So what is this about? This is about whether our children have been adequately protected from harm. This is about providing parents with immediate, complete, transparent information when their children may be at risk. This is about failing to ask parents about current health conditions, which, in all likelihood, would have changed the experts' assessment of the classroom from safe to unsafe. This is about a refusal to take responsibility for a poorly executed response to a real and present danger to our children. As you have now heard from the teachers, who I commend for coming forward today, this is about a pattern of ignoring health concerns of employees in the school system. The state of Minnesota has developed a very useful document titled Recommended Best Practices for Mold Remediation in Minnesota Schools. The very first section after the introduction is titled Communication. One brief quotation. When a mold problem is perceived as a potential health threat, especially to children, it is predictable that people may become distrustful, anxious, and even openly hostile. This is especially true when parents feel that appropriate actions and safeguards are not being taken, that information has been withheld from them, or that their concerns are not being taken seriously. The paragraph concludes, to manage expectations and prevent unnecessary anxiety, it is essential to effectively deliver complete and accurate information to affected stakeholders about the nature of the problem and the school's response. The Minnesota Department of Health has not identified any circumstances where information should be withheld when questions about mold in a school are raised. I think it would be safe to say that a 14-day delay in communicating with parents about a dusty room and not attaching the complete report would fail their standard. As I said before, this is not about anyone intentionally harming our children. I fear this is simply about incompetence. This school system doesn't know how to deal with a serious health issue or how to effectively communicate about it. Worse yet, the district can't seem to acknowledge the shortcomings in the face of an entire community up in arms. We should not be applauding the administration, as I read in the paper today. The information provided was incomplete and vague, perhaps intentionally. Our decision-making process.
I think you're out of order now, and I'd ask you to sit down because you're referring specifically to a member of our staff, of our administration.
I quoted your quote from the paper about the administration. The decision-making process of this school is weak, perhaps broken, and needs to be fixed in order to protect our children. Hire an expert, don't provide him with adequate information, write a dusty room email, and hide behind the expert's flawed conclusion. That is the very definition of broken. We are looking to you to fix it, and rest assured we will not go away until you do. This is not an easy fix because you cannot fix incompetence. We await your response.
Okay, you're out of order. You sit down. Scott Bragg.
Good evening. I just first and foremost want to thank everybody for taking the time, community members for showing up in support of this issue. I think my wife said basically everything I was hoping for us both collectively to get across this evening. I personally am dissatisfied with the level of transparency that has taken place to date. I did enjoy hearing about some of the steps being taken as we move forward. I think that's critical to help us as a community regain our trust, because I feel like that has been broken. I was satisfied with the remediation job that took place. That put me at ease, made me feel like we could continue to send our child to the school pending further testing and pending some consistency in those results. I was very bothered by this. These are our kids. And forgive us if we do come across as slightly hostile, as it's just our human nature to want to protect the children that we're raising to be adults, responsible, respectful adults, like we're all here trying to be. And I don't want that to be lost in all of this. We're emotional because we care. We know you care. We know this isn't intentional, but we feel like the transparency fell short in this process, and we are collectively here to demand change as we move forward. So, thank you very much.
Okay, Scott, thanks. Amanda Fontaine?
Hi, thank you. I have 2 children in the RSU. I have a 2nd grader at Manchester and a 6th grader here at Maranacook. My son is perfectly healthy, thankfully so. My daughter, on the other hand, has not been as lucky. Sorry. Ask anyone who knows her, who has seen her at the gym, at school, or anywhere else. She is the one with the ridiculously annoying hacking cough that never stops. Erin is a bright and energetic 11-year-old. She's a competitive gymnast who dedicates herself to her sport and spends over 20 hours a week training in addition to school. She's a straight-A student, and any teacher that she would have had would say she's a pleasure to teach and have in class. While a student in the winter of 2015, while in Mrs. Galetta's 4th grade classroom, Erin caught a cold, developed an ear infection and a cough that has remained with her in some capacity until very recently. We spent months, 18 months, working with doctors, specialists, school nurses, trainers to find out what was going on. Nearly a dozen doctor's appointments and countless calls for advice. We were lost as to how to help her. Her sleep patterns were being affected. She also would wake up in the middle of the night and not be able to breathe. Her training was interrupted. Her schoolwork was suffering. She would be kept up at all hours of the night, coughing and wheezing. She was tested for allergies, asthma, strep, pertussis, sometimes more than once, and all negative. We tried a steroid to calm her lungs, and when she wasn't able to take the pill, we had to resort to a painful injection. She actually missed a gymnastics meet because her arm hurt from that injection. Her father and I lost time at work. She missed days at school, and the stress of trying to solve the problem was weighing very heavily. The allergist suggested she might actually have an allergy to the chalk that they use at the gym, and that she might need to find another sport to participate in if this one was making her sick. The thought of that was devastating to her. Finally, in May of 2016, after a visit to the pulmonologist in Portland, she was diagnosed with something you've probably now heard of, vocal cord dysfunction. Essentially, she was teaching her body that it was the norm to cough, and she had an inhaler that she needed to use prior to any exercise. According to the pulmonologist, Erin had obstructive limitation of both inhalation and exhalation. Even after she was diagnosed, she continued to struggle. I have an email from a school nurse detailing her struggle to learn how to use her new inhaler to get the most out of her treatments. Luckily for us, Erin's symptoms have greatly improved. She has an inhaler in her bag she has not needed to use in months. Coincidentally or not, she is no longer a student at Manchester Elementary. At the urging of officials at the meeting the other night, I did call our pediatrician. She stated that in addition to a few other irritants, mold is one of the top causes of irritant coughs, and without any evidence either way that her symptoms could have been caused by something like this in her school. When the email came home stating there was mold in the basement and my son's classroom from last year was dusty, I will admit I thought about her cough for a second but then moved on. She wasn't anywhere near those mentioned classrooms, and she wasn't even enrolled in the school anymore. As time went on and more people came out to mention their children in similar symptoms, I began to think I could no longer ignore this. At that meeting last week, it was stated that the rest of the school was safe and that these classrooms were the only ones affected. If it has anything to do with it, my daughter is proof that that is not true. I cannot say for sure that she suffered from this cough due to anything at that school, but the coincidence is clear. I have to wonder if the risk to any other is worth it. This isn't an issue that should be solely focused on the side of the school that was directly affected. I had asked for the entire school to be tested, but it seems like I don't need to ask for that. The oversight committee, I think, is something that is very important so that parents, staff, the school board, and the administration are all kept on the same page at all times. I'm lucky that I have a child who excels at a sport and who works hard, and she almost lost all of that. And it may have nothing to do with this, or it may, but as a parent, to see the sadness when a doctor tells your child they can't do what they want to do anymore, I will never forget the look on her face. And any other child at that school, I hope their parents never see that look. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Payne.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Payne. I'm a resident of Manchester. I've got 3 kids that go to Manchester Elementary School, 2 in kindergarten, 1 in 2nd grade. Yes, that does mean I have twins, so I'll accept your sympathy at any time. But first, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak and to be heard. It's important that all of us have that opportunity, so thank you. For starters, as I think you've heard from a lot of different people, I think we can all agree that we must have a safe and healthy learning environment for our students, staff, teachers, and everyone who comes in and out of that building. Given the recent news about the mold, about the limited testing that occurred, I called air quality management myself last week just to get a sense of what it would cost to test the entire school. So just to give you a sense of where we are, ballpark numbers, presumably somebody will do this follow-up themselves and maybe already has. It's about $140 per room to do surface and air testing. If we tested 15 rooms, used air quality management as the contractor, included their time to set up the tests, analyze the results, and write the report, somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 is the cost. Pretty nominal amount of money for the safety of our kids and staff. But stepping back from that specific issue, I hope one of your major takeaways from tonight is that there's a credibility deficit that hangs over the administration right now. The communication with parents was mishandled. I hope it never, ever happens this way again. Some people may feel like it was handled appropriately. From the parent side of the equation, it wasn't. So there should be no ambiguity going forward. If something like this ever happens again, it needs to be done differently and immediately. Cannot be repeated. Last week's response of being content with the way it went is not acceptable. Moving forward, on a more positive note, the easy way to rebuild some of that frayed trust is to test the school. All of the rooms in the school now. Not some of the rooms, not a few of the rooms, not in 6 months, now. So, to me, $3,000 seems a small price to pay to ensure the health and well-being of our kids, our teachers, and the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Darcy Freeman?
Hi, I'm Darcy Freeman. I have 4 children. One of them has already graduated from Marana Cook. I have a junior here at Marana Cook, and I have 2 children at Manchester Elementary School, 1 in 5th grade and 1 in 3rd grade. I'm also a member of the PTCO, and at the last meeting, when I talked to the superintendent and told her that there were items that were lost, she suggested that we put a list together, so I have lists for everybody here. I just want to mention that when you go down through these lists, we weren't allowed to take an inventory of anything that was in the basement at the time, and we weren't allowed to stand outside and watch items be thrown away. So these are all items from other PTCO members and teachers that have helped me comprise this list. Also, like when you read down through here, some of these things, just like our field day supplies, well, we had 2 bubble machines downstairs, and I know that might seem trivial at $40 for 2 bubble machines, but when you add all of the items up, that were the cost to replace the items is over $7,000 that we have figured out from memory of what was down there. The PTCO fundraises all year to provide field trips for the kids at our schools. So we can send kids on field trips for free and not charge parents to send kids whenever the teachers request someplace to send the kids. The PTCO does everything they can to send those kids. We also bring in the planetarium and the mad science and hold dances and do lots of functions. And a $7,000 loss for us and our teachers is almost impossible for us to gain back. So I hope that you take a chance and just look at this list. Just a couple personal questions. I want to know if the basement has now been remediated and it's completely clean and it's safe. I want to know why the door to the basement is locked and nobody has a key and we can't put items down in the basement. That seems kind of wonky to me. And also, my daughter, the one that's in 5th grade, this year has started with severe dizzy spells and headaches, enough where she's had to be sent home several times. Even Joyce, our school secretary, has called me saying she's crying, she has severe headaches. I don't know, I can't attribute one to the other, but she comes home and she lays down for an hour and she's like, Mom, I'm embarrassed because I feel fine now. So it's, you know, I don't know. I don't know if that's the reason for it. I do know that saying that that you have the children's best interest at heart is a really wonderful thing to say. And I know from personal experience that, that Mr. Conway, the principal here at the high school, goes above and beyond what any person would expect an administrator to do. He cares so much about the children that go to this high school that I'm proud that my children go to high school for him. And he gets up every day and is beyond wonderful and goes out of his way to make sure that the kids at this school and the parents at this school feel safe. And I hope that someday the parents at Manchester could feel the same way. So they should, I mean, if the administration is looking for an example, they should definitely look towards Mr. Conway. That's all I have to say. Here's my list.
Okay, Darcy, next is Amy Jones.
Well, I'm here this evening because, like many of the speakers we've already heard from, I am concerned, frustrated, and looking for better communication. Better communication to ensure the safety of our children. There have been 3 cases of poor communication that have happened just this school year that I know of, because my children were directly affected. The lockdown at Manchester Elementary School. I found out about the commotion in town by reading a newspaper article. The non-water issue at the high school and the fact that our kids were kept in school while it had no running water. I received no communication from the school in regards to this. I found out about it from my sophomore. This newest issue of mold, not going to go into detail because it's been outlined for you all this evening. Thankfully, all of these had the best case scenario outcome because I can't help but think of the what if outcome. As a parent, I'm faced with what ifs every day. I tell my children not to climb on things with the what if outcome fear. So I am sure you can all understand why my mind went to the what if outcome with these events. While the bathroom situation was solved, by grouping our children up and transporting them to porta potties by the football field, the larger picture was not solved. What if there was a fire at the high school during this non-water issue? No water means no sprinklers, right? What if a child or teacher had a severe allergic reaction to mold in our elementary school, which resulted in a life-threatening asthma attack? It happens every day. I want to feel safe sending my children to school every day, and I want to see a change in the lack of transparency in this school district before, God forbid, the best-case scenario outcome becomes one of the tragic what-if outcomes. And as a side note, Laura E. Richards Elementary has a Facebook page set up and issued an alert to followers on this page at 10 o'clock this morning that there was a water main break today in their area and that they were dismissing students due to no water. In this message, it also indicated a school messenger notice, we all know that that works at 5 o'clock in the morning on a school day, was sent out, and the superintendent was calling local news channels. I feel RSU 38 could probably take a page from this local school's book on how to keep parents informed. Thank you.
This is a point of information. We did have a sprinkler system working the day that the water was turned.
That's a different.
We did have a sprinkler system. Next, is this Cheryl Marvini, or I can't read it real well. Cheryl Marvini was here earlier.
Oh, she signed on that one,
Maybe she just signed because she showed up. She was one of the presenters,
Maybe she
or
thought it was
helping with
for
the
the budget.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're moving down a little quicker than I thought on this list then. Caitlin Tarr? Oh, well, wait, I'm sorry.
Michelle, we want to speak today.
It says Michelle Woodford maybe, so I thought you were crossed off.
Yeah, I had to feel it out.
I'm Michelle Woodford. I've met you guys. I'm a resident of Reedfield. I have to say, I came here tonight not knowing whether or not I was going to speak. And I come here tonight sad. Very, very sad. Communication is all these people, all we are asking for from a year ago to now. Transparency. You wouldn't have a room full of people, maybe half a room, if you said, you know what, darn it, I made a mistake. On the letter I signed, it said dust. It should have said mold. I should have sent the letter out 2 weeks ago. The transparent.
Okay, you're talking about a process that's critical to a
Terry,
specific person, and I'm going to call you out of order and ask you to sit down. I'm calling her out of order and asking her to sit down.
We're here to hear what they have to say, and you're here to listen to us as parents.
Okay, you're out of order, and I'll ask you to stay seated. There are rules that are understood about what you can and cannot do in a public meeting, and I'm going to be sure we follow them. Did someone just ask a question, or are we moving on?
I was asking, are these just arbitrary rules about?
No, no.
Okay, printed.
No, it's state law. It is state law. It is state law. Okay. Caitlin Tarr. She's gone. Oh, John Thaler. I walked in with him, so I know he's here.
I am John Thaler. I have 3 children at Manchester Elementary. All 3 of my kids have spent at least 1, if not 2 years in the mold classrooms. I have a long list of points, and they've been made very eloquently by all the amazing parents that have already spoken before me. So I'll just add my number to the ranks of people that are disappointed. And I guess I'll just make a comment. We're asking to rebuild the trust because I think you can see a community of parents in front of you. I think you've seen a community of parents in front of you.
I'm sorry, can we do this? We can't hear you. Please.
Okay. Is that better? Can you guys hear me now? What I see here in this room is a community of parents in front of you that have lost confidence and lost trust in the school board. And I feel I have to stop, or you might take out your gavel. You have the opportunity to rebuild it. But you're losing it right here in this meeting. How do you expect to rebuild that trust? I think when people have a difference of opinion, it's natural. But maybe when you have a difference of opinion from an entire community, you might want to rethink your opinion. I thought tonight was going to go better than this. I'm disappointed.
Thank you, John. Craig Garofalo.
Cue the microphone issues. I just want to take an opportunity again. We've all been here for 2 hours now, and I wanted to thank the school board. I know you guys are in elected positions and do this on a regular basis, and obviously are not used to this crowd here. But I hope in the positions that we've elected to you, you're taking the time to listen to us and understand that this is a community reaching out because we are dissatisfied and feel we've gone through the proper channels. And I know there's been concern from the district that this was going to be unruly and we had to have rules and all this stuff, but I think we've had a very calm, reasonable approach from a phenomenal group of parents here who are level-headed, intelligent people who are asking for your help. So I just wanted to take the opportunity. I'm not going to rehash everything that's already been said, but to thank you guys for listening to us, for what you do all year, throughout the year, and for taking the time to really hear us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. The last speaker that signed up, Sarah Russell.
Hi, I wanted to thank you all for meeting with us tonight. My name is Sarah Russell. I live in Manchester. I have 2 children in school. One is in pre-K and one of them is in 2nd grade. We moved to Manchester summer of 2015. My daughter started school a year ago in the fall. She never had any health problems, nothing at all really to speak of. And a couple of months into the school year, she started coughing. I have heard from numerous parents who children have the same symptoms, coughing, unexplained. We took her to the doctor several times. We thought maybe it was a cold, maybe it will pass. We waited months, and she kept coughing, and it kept her up at night. It distracted her at school. It segregated her from her friends that she was trying to make in a new community. We finally got a referral in to an allergist, and we had to wait all summer for the appointment because that's how it works. So as the summer goes on, miraculously, my daughter has improved. I told the allergist it's like Murphy's Law. We finally get in for the appointment. She seems much better. Haven't had hardly any coughing all summer. Now I guess I know why. The allergist diagnosed her with a dust allergy and said that she possibly has asthma. We're still not sure. Put her on a medication that causes nightmares. restlessness, distraction, which is something we're already dealing with at school. So none of these things helped her. The coughing didn't help, the medications hurting in other ways. It wasn't until she went back to school this fall that the symptoms restarted. If she misses her medication for a day or two, she's coughing all over again. And then the email came out. I understand the email was written by Donna. It was sent to parents by Janet. I know this because when I replied to the email, my reply was sent to Janet, and Janet is who responded to me. The email that I received was on November 30th and said that there was dust in the classrooms. Obviously, this was very concerning to me, and I was very upset immediately because my daughter had been diagnosed with a dust allergy. I asked questions. I was assured that the dust would be taken care of. I'll remind you, my daughter is now in 2nd grade. When the symptoms started, she was in 1st grade in Mrs. Gurney's classroom, one of the affected rooms that we now know. It wasn't until January that the final report came out that told us that there was actually also mold in the classroom. Coincidentally, mold presents a lot of the same symptoms as allergies. I'm curious how many children have been affected this way, children who are currently in school, children who have moved on, who are now in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, junior high. I worry about the teachers' health, I worry about the children's health, I worry about how it impacts their life in other ways, and their ability to sleep, and their ability to learn, and their ability to concentrate, in their social lives. I wonder about how many families have been affected, and what I would like to see, along with further testing of the entire school and better communication from the administration, is some literature sent home. I would like to see all of the parents sent home from school and emailed information about what the hazards are of mold and what symptoms they might need to look for in their children, encouraging them to take their children to a pediatrician or a family doctor if they suspect any problems that could potentially be related to the air quality at the school. This really hasn't been done yet. I would also like to see perhaps a survey taken. We've heard a few times that the school didn't have any real knowledge of any particular cases of health problems, maybe one that could have been impacted by the air quality at the school. But there hasn't exactly been a survey taken either. And I know, because I've asked, that a lot of parents' children have had the same problems with the unexplained coughing that doesn't go away. I'd like to see the school take on some responsibility and ask those questions and suggest to the parents what methods maybe they should take. So far it's been, this is the report, this is what we've done. I'd like to see the school take it a step further to care about our children's health and our teachers' health and say, this is what happened, this is what you need to look for and who you should speak to if you're concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any additions or adjustments to the agenda that a board member would like to make, or you, Donna?
I have none.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break before we move on to action, discussion, and informational items. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of January 4th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, January 4th.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion, comments, corrections to be made? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Because you weren't here, okay. I'll entertain a motion for consideration of request for 2 exceptions to the nepotism policy. How would that go? You want?
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Explanations for these 2 requests were in your packet. The RSU 38 nepotism policy states, "The board may approve an exception to this policy where the board determines that granting of such exception is in the best interest of the school system." The first request I received is a request to hire a student worker who is the son of a school board member. The student worker supports the athletic activities under the direction of Student Services Director Al McGregor. Responsibilities include working basketball games with the duties of clock timing, ticket sales, setup and cleanup, and other similar duties as assigned. The student worker position was posted to the student body on October 24th, 2016. There was no response to the ad with the exception of this student. Do you want to take these one at a time to approve?
Yeah, I do.
So this student, nobody in this whole school, is this, I took it as they're doing baseball?
Basketball.
Basketball.
Basketball. Only that one sport.
Yes.
Can I make a point of clarification? It happens to be my son, Max. And I want to clarify because he's actually only done 2 games, and he splits the time with Courtney Davidson, who's, I believe, a junior at the high school. And Max has only done 2 games. And I guess it was Al's feeling that he needed to get approval of the board, which I totally respect. And Courtney's been covering the games, and Max kind of fills in for her if she can't do it. And they've done it together, I think, a couple of times. Maybe you know better, Diane. But he's not doing it every Tuesday and Friday, just so you know. It's a as-needed type of thing.
I make a motion that we approve the student worker for this basketball game as written.
Is there a second? All in favor? Okay.
The second request is to approve the hiring of a substitute teacher who is the spouse of a school board member. We do struggle to find substitute teachers, and this individual is a certified teacher.
So,
We accept this exception.
Who is it? Or we don't know, we don't ask. Oh,
It's the spouse of a board member.
okay.
so this, wait a minute. You have said to me that we have no problem in hiring teachers. And
No, this is substitutes. We have a problem in hiring substitutes.
Yeah.
make a motion that we accept the substitute teacher.
Sorry, good motion.
All in favor? Okay.
Okay. If that person so wishes to reveal.
Sean, you go home and say, guess what, honey, I get you a job.
She actually did it without, it was in the conversation with the secretary, she had the application, and I was like, I don't think you can do that. And she said, what the heck?
Sorry? Make a motion that we accept the KF school facilities as written.
Oh, this is a second reading.
Do you want me to read my little thing?
No, this is second read.
Okay, well.
You got to do the first one, right?
The policy committee met on January 9th, 2017. One revision was made to the draft of policy KF, adding the word local to section B1. No other comments were received. The policy committee recommends approval of policy KF.
Make a motion that we accept KF as written.
Discussion?
Yeah, you can make the motion, somebody will second, and then I'll say, is there any discussion?
Okay. I might be asleep.
Is there any discussion?
Just tell me if I'm wrong, but shouldn't it be B2, not B1?
Yes, yes, you're right. It's B2, thank you.
Now I can go back to sleep.
I'm glad you weren't sleeping and you caught that, you know?
My goodness.
Yes, B2, you're right.
Okay. All in
Oh.
favor? Opposed?
Okay, interestingly enough, the next one is BCC, the nepotism policy. One revision was made at the suggestion of the RSU 38 School Board to include the district definition of immediate family to the policy as follows. Immediate family means spouse, brother, sister, parent, step-parent, child, stepchild, or any other person who lives in the same household. The policy committee recommends the approval of policy BCC.
Accept policy, the BCC.
Second.
Thank you for the revision. Okay,
Oh, sorry.
discussion? No, all in favor? All opposed? Okay, go ahead.
BDD, Board Superintendent Relationship. No additional comments were received and no changes were recommended. Policy Committee recommends approval of policy BDD.
Make a motion that we accept BDD for superintendent relationship as written.
Is there a second? Is there discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Policy first readings. These first reading policies are submitted to the board but do not require a vote. Please forward any additional comments to central office for consideration, and you might have some tonight as well. ADAB, School System Commitment to Standards for Ethical and Responsible Staff Behavior. This is a new policy. The Policy Committee recommends moving policy ADAB to first reading. EBCA, Emergency Response Plan. This policy was reviewed as part of the process of reviewing older policies. The committee reviewed the current policy and the MSMA sample policy. The policy committee recommends moving the MSMA sample policy, EBCA, to first reading. GCCA, Extended Leaves of Absence. This policy was reviewed as part of the process of reviewing older policies. The committee reviewed the current policy and made the recommendation of adding to Section 2 the first sentence, and benefits. GCFB, Recruiting and Hiring of Administrative Staff. I didn't write anything about that. So, it doesn't need a
Does
vote.
anyone have comment on any of this? It doesn't need a vote, we'll move it to second reading unless there's more people submit any comments they have after the fact?
Yes.
After, right?
Yes.
Okay. Item 5E.
Are we to budget workshop?
I'll accept, no,
Oh.
I'll accept a motion for
Right.
the acceptance of a teacher resignation.
Did she just make a presentation?
There is no written paperwork on her whatsoever.
It's a resignation.
We
I
usually
don't
get a
care,
letter.
there's normally a paper that says why they resigned.
I will find out why it's not in here. What?
I forgot to put the letter in the folder.
That's okay, Donna. You can email it to us. Are we at
No,
discussion
I don't
yet?
think we should accept it at this time, until there's a letter. Because that letter normally tells us exactly what we're doing right or wrong.
Well, she's accepted a new job, I do know
She's
that.
she's accepted
In
a new
Lewiston.
position in a different district.
Auburn or Lewiston. Is there a motion?
Would anyone like to make a motion to accept the resignation?
I'll move that we accept Christine Muller's resignation as the math interventionist at RES with regret. I happen to really like Christine and have been impacted personally by her work, and I am sad that she's leaving us, but understand she's got a great opportunity at her door, so.
Is there a second?
So,
Is there further discussion?
yeah,
Okay.
so this is a teacher. Did you
She's
hire
an
another one?
interventionist.
We have advertised.
When do you expect to hire?
We are receiving applications right now, and depending on who the applicants are, it may mean a major shift in the middle of the year, which we really don't want to do for students, so we may end up with a substitute or an Ed Tech 3. We're working on it. But that position will be replaced.
And how's the interventionist working around it right now? She's already gone, you claim.
No.
No,
No, she's
leaving. She's accepted a new job. And I only know that because she's a friend of mine.
No, she hasn't left yet.
I mean, she signed a contract for the year, though, right? I mean, I guess I get Gary's point that if she has signed a
Yes, she
contract
did.
for the year, we
So what is
could
that?
legally hold her to that.
Legally, she has to give us 60 days' notice.
When is her departure date, Donna?
Pardon me?
When is her departure date, do you know?
This is a personnel issue, we really can't talk about
Okay.
it in full board.
Well, I think it would help Gary realize that we have 60 days, Gary, to make sure that there will be a plan in place. I think that's what Donna said, so we have to trust that Donna knows what she's doing.
Yeah, I met with Kate Taylor and Jeff Boston this morning to discuss it, so we do have a plan.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I guess I would just say I understand it's a personnel issue, but I would hope that interventionists are a serious thing. We saw with math, there's a lot of issues. People sign a contract. I understand people get opportunities, been offered a lot of opportunities, but I take my job serious, and I hope we hold this person to their 60-day requirement.
Make a motion that we accept Christine Muller's resignation.
There's already a motion
Okay,
on the table.
well, we've gotten that far. We can have a vote now. All in favor?
Who seconded it?
Somebody did. I can't believe this is still video gaming. I can't believe I said that earlier. Okay, so it's time for the budget workshop.
Wow.
Video gaming. Okay, so in your packet, you had received several pieces of budget information, and these are the same pieces of information that you received last year at this same time, and these pieces are important to the process. So I'm just going to quickly walk us through what you received. The first chart is a longitudinal history of valuations for the 4 towns. Valuation plays a major role in funding for our district. The best case scenario is when valuations are down and enrollment is up. And you can see by the chart that valuation in all 4 towns has increased, with Manchester and Mount Vernon having the highest increases. While Reedfield and Wayne experienced an increase, their 7-year average still shows a decrease, as does the district total. So that's valuations.
That's in our folder?
Not in your folder, it was in your packet. Oh. Do you want me to share with you? Oh, no. Missy has it. Okay. So next we have a district enrollment history since FY04. This is based on figures from the October 1 count. You'll see that the attending enrollment, which includes non-residents, is down by 11 from last year, and the resident enrollment has decreased slightly by 4 students.
Okay.
Then the next one is the RSU 38 enrollment, and this shows the current enrollment as of January 1st, 2017. The total as of January 1st was actually 1,214, an increase of 16 students from the October 1 count. Thanks, Donna. And so you can see also in this the class configurations, and when there's a slash, that means there are two classes, and the numbers on either side tell how many students are in each class. Then the next one is the subsidy history, the RSU 38 subsidy history, and this shows a visual of budget and subsidy trends. And you can see that FY17 represents the lowest subsidy. Last week at the State Superintendent's Conference in Portland, the DOE reported that we should not expect our ED 279s in February. So we will have no idea about subsidy until at least March. And that's not good news for us. It's difficult. The next one is a set of pie charts, and that gives us an idea of the distribution of the budget for the last 3 years. And you'll see that in each of these 3, salary and benefits, which are based on the negotiated agreement, have represented over 75% of the budget.
But oddly enough, they haven't gone up that much as a percentage. So we want greater enrollment and greater valuation.
No, best is when enrollment goes up and valuation goes down.
Well, I have a question about the enrollment numbers. So we have a different number attending and resident, so where are the extra 40 kids coming from?
We have some students who pay tuition to come here, so.
40?
Do we have, pardon me?
Fayette.
Fayette, yep.
Wow. Okay.
Pay tuition. You also received in your packet new program position and purchase requests forms, and these will be included in the budgets of the principals that we'll present tonight. Not included in their budgets, in their presentations tonight, are requests for operations and maintenance, technology, special education, co- and extracurricular activities. Those budgets will be presented at another time. Last year, the RSU 38 School Board requested that administrators submit their perfect budgets, including what they felt they needed. We followed the same procedure to begin this year, realizing that we will probably have some work ahead of us as we respect the needs and wishes of the local taxpayers with the interests of students in mind. We passed out our original request summary budgets, as well as the original request budgets for each of the schools. Remember that we have not worked on these at all. The first page is the general fund's school summary original request budget. This shows an overall budget increase of $1,409,810.71, an 8.5%, 55% increase over the FY17 budget. Is everybody with me on this? Okay. You can trace from left to right along that budget to follow the history of the budget and expenditures from FY17.
Is this what you're looking at?
Yes.
All right.
Under the general fund school summary budget, original request budget, you have the original request budgets from each of the schools. Again, these, they include maintenance projects, technology, and some special ed costs, but these areas will be presented at later dates. So tonight, the principals will be talking about their budgets and will be explaining the needs of their schools. I would ask that you direct your attention to the presentations and hold your questions until after each principal has presented.
Are these a zero-based budget? I mean, are these based on, we're gonna build from the ground up, or are they just, looking at, well, we'll just add 15% to the budget?
No, they're based on what the principals felt that they needed
But that doesn't
to
answer my
run
question.
their schools.
Does it start with a zero base, or is it like a percentage of last year?
No, it starts out as a zero base.
It's not a percentage of last year, it's what,
Increases.
no, it's what people, it's what we determine is necessary. But it's not zero base, because we have all of this experience, and to start all over
For
again
example,
would
staffing.
be nuts.
Well, and
Okay, so-
I certainly can understand that.
Yeah, so staffing,
That's added into
we know, I meet with the principals and we talk about, what extra staffing might you need, or sometimes the staffing goes down. So it's, it's a given that we have those classrooms, and each of those classrooms have needs. but it's not given that it's always in addition to, because we do look at the whole picture every year and, what they need, so.
Yeah.
I think, John, too, that in the past, I think Donna mentioned this when she started talking, but I'm not, she was talking, it's a lot of information to process, but we've asked our administrators to prepare a perfect budget. In a perfect world, if we had whatever money at their disposal, what it is they believe they need, and then we've kind of worked backwards from that during budget season. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so first, our first presenter is Janet Delmar, and she's the principal of Mount Vernon and Manchester, so she will be talking about both of those schools. Sure, Bridget.
I just want to say one thing quickly. When you flip over to page 2, you're going to see Manchester Elementary School summary budget, original request. At this point, it goes into departmental budget, and the lines that have a date next to them will be talked about at a different time. They won't be talked about tonight, but the ones that don't have a date will be discussed this evening.
Janet.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start out with just a little brief general overview, a couple celebrations. For both schools, Manchester and Mount Vernon, I'd like to take a minute and recognize the work that our school librarians and library ed techs do every year. Our library programs are phenomenal, and a couple highlights would be our KVBA book program for grades 3 to 5. With Manchester, with 75 students last year in grades 3 to 5, 69 of those students, 92% of them, participated in that KVBA program. And at Mount Vernon, 54 of 55 students in 3 to 5 participated in that. That's 98%. And it's always culminated every year with a big celebration. The Chickadee Book Award is for K2 students, and they get exposed to a lot of great new literature, just like with the 3-5 KVBA book program. And the circulation at Manchester was over 9,000 books last school year, and at Mount Vernon it was over 6,000 books. So these are really great programs, and I want to celebrate how well the kids, all kids, use these books. And I know I'm not speaking for Reedfield and Wayne, but the numbers are very similar. These are very popular, and our libraries are really being used. So I just want to share that great celebration with you. In looking at Manchester, I want to talk a little data. Over the past 2 years, we've had an increase in school-wide performance in our DRA assessment, which is the developmental reading assessment Maria talked a little bit about earlier. And that assessment asks students to read a variety of texts and respond in a certain way. And we have grown from a school-wide average, that's kindergarten through 5th grade, from 68% meeting and exceeding to 83% last year. We've spent a lot of time really focusing our professional development, looking at the data, what do we need to work on, and using the help from Barbara Burgoyne, the district coach, and especially Rachel Bouchy, our literacy specialist, to design professional development, daily 5, word study, book studies, and resources and training to really help boost that. And I think we're seeing, in effect, great teaching and learning happening there, and I wanted to share that with you. Another thing that the board really supported last year was full-time interventionists in math, and we're seeing that 100% of the students that need services support are getting some type of support in Manchester through the math intervention program. And so with that full-time position, we're able to have Erica Boudreau either push in classrooms, pull out one-on-one or small group, and do, again, professional development, start to lead some math instructional rounds this year, and also help at staff meetings. So these things the board has supported, and it's, I think, great for Manchester. And also last year's budget really helped to increase classroom libraries, literacy text sets, and our new science curriculum. Looking at the enrollment, it looks very much the same for next year's projection, so I have no new requests that I'm making at Manchester. I'd like to maintain the current positions, funding, and programming. Looking over at Mount Vernon, again, I talked to you a little bit about the library program. I'd like to celebrate the fact that the board supported a behavior interventionist Ed Tech 3 last year. This person has, anecdotally, I can tell you, really added to the school's environment and helping promote our be safe, be responsible, and be respectful, and working an overall positive climate and student behavior. And it's been an excellent addition this year. Our budget last year also focused on increasing materials for classroom libraries, literacy text sets, and new science curriculum, and it's really helped boost that school's materials up to what they need. Moving forward, I'm asking to change the half-time math interventionist position to a full-time position. Currently, Abby Schenk was here tonight to talk with you, and she works between Wayne and Mount Vernon. She's an incredible resource. She's currently serving 18 students in math support in Mount Vernon. Some of these groups, though, are as large as 4 students, and it's not ideal. 31% of the students that she's working with are below the 35th percentile in the fall NUIA data, and currently, due to the half-time position, the math interventionist is only able to work with 40% of those students. We currently have 10 students on a waiting list that she's not able to see at this time. And she's worked, we plan and sit down all the time and try to figure out what a creative way. She works with some kids at 7:30 as soon as they get off the bus. She really doesn't have a planning period, and she's working diligently to try to work with these kids as much as possible, but still, there's just not, her time is only limited to the morning, and she's just not able to see all the students that really could use this kind of support. At this school, she doesn't work with any kindergarten students, and so moving forward, I really request from the board to make that 50% position to 100%. Other than that, I'd like to maintain all the current positions in funding and programming, and that's my budget proposal.
Thank you.
So, if we have the interventionists going between Mount Vernon and Wayne, what if we took that other half and put it over to Manchester? Would that bring that scale down that we saw?
Manchester has a full-time math interventionist now.
Right, but the scores were not that hot in Manchester.
So right now, you're talking about the different data supporting math, and that's something that we're focusing on there as well. That we're keeping track of all the common math assessments that are throughout the year, and we're looking, of course, at the different data points, whether it's the NWA or other assessments, and it's a work in progress.
I'm just thinking of,
Gary, talking to your mic.
when I look at this page, that half that's in Wayne, because this thing is so lopsided, could we take care of part of that problem in Manchester? That's what I'm asking. In your planning.
Well, I don't know if I can speak for Wayne. We'll just take all those Wayne people. How about that? No, but I guess I'm not as clear of what you're asking. Okay.
To use it in the middle school, I'm sorry.
In the middle school.
Yeah.
But Wayne still needs a half time.
Yes.
And she wants to increase.
Hers. Still full.
Yeah, currently Manchester's right around 190, sometimes a little higher, 195, sometimes a little lower, and they have a full-time math interventionist for that 193 students. Mount Vernon, some years it's like a 145. This year it's around 130 to 125. It fluctuates quite a bit, but it's a school it's not as big as Manchester and Reedfield, but certainly twice the size of, or nearly twice the size of Wayne, and it has the need base there. You know, the score support that more interventionist support would be helpful.
Janet, I know you've been working really hard on having maybe a change of instruction and working with teachers to modify instruction to go ahead and meet the needs of the students. Is that not working?
Is it not working?
Yeah.
No, I definitely think it is working. I think there's a lot of things we consider. If you're looking at testing scores, as you know, the MEA changed, is smarter balance. It's been a lot of different things. As a matter of fact, our MEA data from last spring, Manchester did exceptionally well of students meeting and exceeding, and we ranked 27th in the state with how well we did on that. We still have a lot of work to do in all the schools. We're adding math instructional rounds and more support in that. I think we are seeing a change, but it's just, we have new students every year, as Missy pointed out earlier, that we're tracking, and hopefully we're going to continue to see improvements.
One other question I had was the instructional technology. Why the significant increase?
Diane McGregor will answer that for you at
okay.
another
All right.
time.
You have to wait for that report.
And then speech as well would be another one.
Right.
A special ed.
Yeah.
Brian will talk about
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh,
Janet.
I think
Thanks,
there's
Janet.
one more.
I didn't see the date. Oh, there's the date.
Sean has a question.
That's okay.
Janet, Sean has a question.
Yes. There's,
I really have a question.
A comment?
I'm gonna make a comment.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, I think you do a really good job. Heard great things about you from parents, and I wanted to say that publicly and on the record, so.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Have you, instead of increasing it by a full half-time, have you considered adding a quarter more or any other percentage instead of doubling the services?
I think one of the tricky parts with what we've run into this year, Abby Schenk being the math interventionist and Susan Lockhart is the literacy specialist. Susan's there all day and she's able to really build a schedule with all the teachers, kindergarten through 5th grade. Like, when do you do your literacy time? How can I work with your students? Having Abby there just that morning has really limited when we can all access students. Oftentimes, but not always, students are receiving supports in reading and in math, and there's really conflicting schedules when you start building in lunch and PE, and adding another quarter day, I don't know if that would help us figure out that problem. Like I said, we have 10 students on a waiting list, and also you know, I don't know if that certainly wouldn't give Wayne a half day, and I don't know. We had only a quarter the year before, and it really limited, so we bumped it to a half, and we're still seeing that. I don't know if that's really answering your question, but adding a quarter I don't think would really free up the time and the blocks to meet the needs of the kids.
One of the issues is lunch is right in there, so if you added a quarter, part of that would be lunch, which is, you can't service kids during lunch, so.
Well, it's a lunch recess kind of block.
Lunch recess. So-
And then there's travel. Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying travel, and maybe, I don't know what the logistics would be, what would happen to Wayne with, I mean, you'd have to have someone different at Wayne. So does it necessarily need to be a full-time? Could it be less than that and still get the services? Meeting with teachers, that sort of thing, could be done at lunch. After that person had lunch. Yeah, I don't know. I
That's
just,
certainly
I would
something
like
I'd
for
look
you to
at.
look
Sure.
at it
Mhm.
and see if full-time is absolutely necessary.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Janet. Is that all the questions for Janet? Okay. Our next presenter is Jeff Boston, and Jeff is principal at Reedfield and Wayne Elementary Schools. And if you flip over, they're the next ones in your packet.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Basically, just to start off with a positive story from last year's budget, and it goes for both schools, is both schools were in dire need of text text, meaning classets, classroom libraries, science books, and other materials. And through the passage of the budget last year, we were able to get that. But it's still a work in progress, because prior to last year, to my knowledge, over the past 10 years, there wasn't a lot of money earmarked for those materials. So what we had in our libraries, not our libraries, but our book libraries and classrooms, was old texts that were missing certain classroom sets. We'd have pieces here and there, and we were lacking science materials. So when I talk about my budget tonight, I'm really looking at trying to build that again this year. I'm really looking at trying to build up the classroom libraries, to build up the science materials with those texts and other materials that are high interest for kids in building their literacy development. With that being said, let me talk about Reedfield a little bit. And the only real staff increase I'm looking at is in 5th grade based on our enrollment. We'll need 2 classrooms next year. We'll have 31 students moving into 5th grade that we know of at this point. Currently, we have 1 5th grade teacher. Prior to last year, we had a retirement, which we didn't need to fill based on enrollment. But this year, with enrollment, we're going to need to add another teacher back into the classroom. So that's why I'm making that request. And then in reference to, we were talking about the budget, just to put things in perspective for the board, as Donna mentioned, about 75 to 8% of the budget is salaries and benefits. I have no control of that. But if you look at page 3 on the original request, and you go about a little over halfway down, you'll see regular education.
Ours doesn't say page.
Oh, you don't?
Because they're all put together.
Okay, well, the 3rd page within the packet, and it has the dates on the side. It starts with guidance, and it goes down, and after the last February 15th, 2017, under...
Okay, I think it's page 7.
Yeah.
Is it page 7? I got page 3. All I want to make a point is there's that regular instruction line. Within that line is what I have a lot of control of. It's supplies, it's curriculum, and it's textbook and workbooks. And so when you look at those lines, I'm looking at an increase of $2,300 compared to last year's budget. That's it, in addition to the extra teacher that I need. Everything you're going to hear, if there are increases in the overall Reedfield line, is probably coming from Kurt, who you hear later in a presentation, or through Diane and technology. Okay? In Wayne, a little different. We need a few extra staff members. Wayne is the only school at the elementary level where we have 8 teachers teaching double grades. Okay, that's 1 teacher for 2 grade levels. It might be small, but if you put that in perspective, that's half the time the rest of the kids in the district are getting an instruction. Okay? So with that inequity, what we're trying to do is provide another adult in the classroom to provide some extra individual support to students when they're not in direct or guided practice with the teacher, so they can get the help they need. So we're looking at moving a current ed tech position from a 2 to a 3, and putting that person in full-time in either our 2nd or 3rd or our 3rd and 4th. So both of those double classrooms would have an ed tech to help support the teacher. Okay? We're also looking at increasing our art time. Our art time is just the mornings on Thursdays, and she's limited time with us. And I think of art as like a science lab. You have to set up materials depending on the grade levels you're dealing with. And currently with our younger kids, our kindergarten and 1st grade, they have about 30 minutes. But by the time they get down there, they get set up, they start work, it's almost time to clean up and they're gone. And at this level, it's really important to develop those fine motor skills as they progress through the grade levels. And also, it's important for not only their development, but for the teachers to display the artwork within the school. She's often having to come back or after hours to post this stuff within our school, and she should have time within her schedule to be able to do some of that work. And it's a minimal it's really a minimal cost in the scope of things when you look at the request I made. And then once again, we are looking at rebuilding our classroom libraries out at Wayne as well. And I'm requesting an additional $3,500 from last year's budget in those 3 lines to this year's. Okay, any questions? Yes.
Yes, about the additional fifth grade teacher, can't you move the extra Manchester fifth grade teacher over there?
That's not my decision.
What did you say?
Can you use the mic?
Oh, sorry. They're asking for an additional teacher for Reedfield because they're going to be 35. But they're only going to be 26 next year in Reedfield.
I'll take it.
And they have 2 teachers right there now, so couldn't they just take the extra teacher and move her over to the other school?
So what has happened is, and in Manchester, for Mount Vernon for this year, we had budgeted for an extra teacher, and then the classrooms, the numbers went down. So we didn't use that position, but it was still in the budget. So actually, the Reedfield position is not adding anything to the budget, but it's just taking that position that we didn't fill anyway from Mount Vernon and moving it to Reedfield.
So there's not actually 2 teachers there?
There's one unfilled position at Mount Vernon that we didn't fill this year. We didn't need to because of, but it was passed in the budget, so it was budgeted for. So that position that was still in the budget for last year but was not filled, now will move into Reedfield, so it isn't an actual increase in the budget.
That extra teacher's already been spoken for, is what you're saying.
There was no extra teacher.
There was no extra teacher, but there was an extra
was extra
position.
money
There
when
was an extra position, but it wasn't filled. Yeah, it wasn't filled. So the money, that money now shifts to Reedfield for that position. So it's not adding anything to the budget. Bridget, can you explain this in a...
Right.
In a better way.
When we originally budgeted it for the current year, we thought we were going to have 2 first grades. And we were going to be needing to hire a new teacher for that position. But then the class numbers dropped. And so we no longer needed to fill that position of first grade in Mount Vernon. And you can actually see that if you look at the Mount Vernon sheet, and it's actually under the kindergarten numbers. If you look towards page 5, you look towards the bottom, a couple lines up from the bottom where it says kindergarten, and you can follow that line over, that's got a $44,000 drop. That's that extra position that was not filled this year. It was budgeted for this year. We thought we were going to need another first grade teacher. Numbers dropped. We didn't need it, so we didn't fill it. So basically, this drop will offset the Reedfield increase.
I guess I'm a little slow.
Okay, so ask again.
But I'm just wondering, if there are 2 teachers at one school for 5th grade, and next year they'll only need 1, what, that
Manchester needs
5th grade teacher is going to move somewhere else, I'm thinking, and can it be that place?
There was never a position filled. So there were never 2 5th grade teachers that you're talking about. It was actually first grade. Right?
So my paper that I have here is
So what are you
incorrect,
looking
that there are
at?
2.
Which
So I
page?
think what you mean, Trish, is that pot of money that our citizens voted on to hire that new teacher never got used to actually pay a new teacher. So
Then-
that money still sits in the budget because you can't change the budget
Can't find
once
my
it's
page.
passed.
Wait a minute.
So
I think
you're
she's
not
looking
seeing
at
an
this.
increase.
Yeah, so, she's looking at this. So
Okay.
Trish,
I'm looking at this.
Can you walk us, yes,
Right.
so can
Yeah.
you walk us through what you're looking at?
I am looking at the fact that there are 2 teachers right now, 2 5th grade teachers in
Where?
Manchester.
2 4th grade.
2 5th grade teachers in Manchester, correct?
Yes,
The 15 and 16.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
And next year, he would like to have 2 in Reedfield, because there's going to be 31
Yes.
people there. Right now, there are only 26. Next year's fifth grade class in Manchester will only have 26. But they have 2 teachers. So can't you just switch?
Send a teacher to Richfield,
Yeah.
I see what she's saying. Yeah, there are.
And instead of having to hire another teacher, we already have one.
Normally, if we go over 25, we've split it down. This happened to grow over the
Right,
time.
but we have a class right now with 26.
Right.
So let's have another class with 26 and not have to hire another teacher. Would be my suggestion.
You're looking at the 13 and the 13 at
Yeah,
Manchester?
she's saying combine
Yeah.
that for next year.
Yes.
So 26.
Oh, Sean has a question.
So, if you look at these, and sorry, I started doing math on oldest ones, my daughter's on that. So if you look at your sheet, the first grade at the third grade at Manchester is gonna have 29 kids in it next year. And then if I'm following these numbers correctly, then the second grade in Reedfield is gonna have 27 kids. Those are the 2 biggest classes in the whole district. And then you're gonna have, to follow up what Trish is saying, you're gonna have classes with 13 and 13 kids. I think as a board, as we work through this budget, we've gotta make a decision on class sizes. Because when you're in a class with 27 kids, and then kids are in a class with 13 kids, you're at an advantage.
Where are you
You're-
seeing that 27?
If you look at the first grade in Reedfield, there's 13 and 14.
Right, that's
Next
two
year,
cla-
they're going to second grade. That's
Right.
27 kids.
Yeah, but that's 2 teachers right now.
No, next year in the second grade, they're not proposing 2 teachers.
Oh,
That's this
no,
year's.
this is current, this is current.
This is this year.
Yeah, but there's no proposal for 2 teachers.
No, we haven't done the proposal for next year.
What will
so-
happen, just to let you know, what will happen is one of the third grade teachers will shift down to second grade probably, and then you'll only have 1 third grade teacher. That 21 will stay as a single all the way up through, and you'll adjust your teachers based on the student count for the other
Do you want
ones.
to talk about that, Jeff? Because I know you have this all planned out.
Next year, there's 29 kids in the third grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, and just get back to Tricia's question, in retrospect, I don't know what the other schools have for staffing. I'm only worrying about my school at this point. I know as we present this and we have discussions, then things, the superintendent and Bridget can help alleviate or support some of those openings based on we have for current staff. So at this point, I can't say anything on that. I just know I'm going to need 2 fifth grade classrooms. So that's what I'm proposing. In reference to the number of teachers at each grade level, Sean, we're looking at kindergarten having 2, first grade having 2, second grade having 2. 1 teacher at third grade with the support of an ed tech, 2 at fourth, and 2 at fifth.
And I would just like to note, too, that, I can't remember what year it was, but it was before Donna came, the board made a commitment to the citizens in our community that and I don't know if this wants to be discussed again, that we would not have class sizes over 25 children, and we would have an ed tech if it was at that number. So when you say 29, that automatically puts a red flag. Yeah, for instance.
Yes, they shift around, yes.
I think that's important to know.
Yep.
You broke it, Sean.
It's getting really late.
I'm gonna be the first thing.
As we get farther into this, we'll do a projection of what the class sizes and how many classes of each will be for next year. This is the enrollment this year.
And Sean, I shared in an email recently with the staff what the proposal is for next year for numbers of teachers at each grade level. And I did ask if anyone's interested in changing teaching assignments for next year to get in touch with me, because sometimes it shifts and everything moves, and what we might say is we need a fifth grade might be something else after we discuss it all and fill within the district or within the building.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Go ahead, Betty.
On the ed tech position for Wayne,
Yes.
I'm going to ask you the same thing. One full-time ed tech shared between 2 classrooms. Why will that not work?
Okay, so you're asking for, well, currently we have an Ed Tech 3 out there that is working between 2 classrooms, and it's not enough support. Currently we have an Ed Tech 3 out there that is working with both teachers, but it's because of scheduling and everything else, and that's 4 classes, that's 4 grade levels within two classrooms. It's not enough support. It really isn't. And what you got to look at is you can have, and this is where I was having a conversation with Donna about, I can't argue about the numbers out there. There are 65 total students. It's a small school, but when you put in perspective that you have 1 teacher teaching 2 grade levels, and you look at the time that the students at each grade level get with that teacher, the level of instruction and support, it's not equitable compared to the rest of the schools in the district of what they're getting. They're getting half as amount, yeah, they are. They're getting half the amount that the rest of the classrooms are getting because they're not having that ongoing instruction. It doesn't go as smooth if you're doing the workshop model either because you have 2 grade levels. You can't start with a 2nd grade text, have a guided reading, and then they're doing other things, and then stop and say, okay, wait a minute, guys, I have to go to 3rd grade now. You guys are on your own for the next 40 minutes.
I hate to say this.
No, go ahead.
I taught 4th and 5th grade for 10 years without, and I know that it was way back in the dark ages.
It was further back. Is that what you said? No.
Yeah. Well, a long time ago, I taught too in the classroom, and things have definitely changed. The level of accountability on teachers, how we use and look at data, the Common Core and what's required, the level of rigor for the students, and the amount of planning that needs to take place, because you can use the term differentiation, I've heard that used today. It's really a specific skill that unfortunately not a lot of educators have, and they can try to do it, but to do it well in a class of say 20 to 25 kids, you have to be a master teacher to be able to do that. And unfortunately, based on the amount of time within a content that you might have and the number of kids you have in that classroom, you can do the numbers and figure out how much time they get with that teacher. It's not much. And I've had this argument with my own kids' teachers as a parent. So I'm well aware of where you're coming from, though, and I appreciate that, Betty. Sean?
Can we get a little well, can I? Maybe no one else cares. Why are these classes combined like that at Wayne? Like, why is there 1 teacher for 2nd and 3rd grade and 1 teacher for 4th and 5th grade?
Yeah.
What's the reason?
I'd have to look to others for reasoning. I've been trying to break it up. I've been trying, why we have 1 teacher at kindergarten and in first is those foundational skills. We really need to give them those smaller learning environments. Unfortunately, once they get to 2nd grade, they get into a double classroom, and the class size is double. You were talking about it earlier, And I've tried to advocate for getting another teacher at the 2nd or 3rd grade level, so then they can have those 4 years or 3 years of a small learning environment before we get to 4th and 5th.
I think there are a couple of issues. One's the logistical with spacing out there. We probably have to get rid of the town office if we did something like that. The other is, unfortunately, the budget and the economy and the way it's been the last 10 years has not been kind to anybody. And so I know when we go through the budget process, unfortunately, that is something that gets taken off the table.
I think, Sean, if you wanted to split those classes, Jeff would be
Oh, I.
The first one jumping up and down
Yeah.
cheering.
You're in the second grade at one school, and you're with 23 kids, and then you're in the second grade at another school, and you only have 14 kids.
So assuming you could find the space, that would cost the difference between a teacher's salary and an ed tech salary over what you've asked for now.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
I think that the problem with, I mean, the history of Wayne is that the enrollment has been so up and down and unpredictable, and these are actually pretty good numbers compared to what they were a few years ago.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of having two teachers rather than,
Okay, thank you.
Well, we can change it. Jeff would be happy. Rick, middle school.
Hello again.
hello world.
I did want to share just one thing we're getting excited about, and I know I'm excited about it. Our PTO at the middle school was able to secure the rights to show Screenagers, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically growing up in the digital age. It's about an hour long and really goes into detail with both parents and students about the dangers and the challenges that kids are facing now in terms of technology, both in terms of cell phones, computers, tablets, all of that. It's been very popular. I know there's several schools around the state that have shown this. We're showing it actually here in the PAC on the 7th of March, and the tickets are now available online. It's pretty amazing how the company that produced this and puts it out for showing pretty much handles everything for our PTO, and we're using it as a fundraiser. So we do have, I believe, Rebecca talked to our PTO and some other people about getting a panel together of exports that will also be available after the showing. So we're hoping to make this a major event come March. So I just wanted to share that with everybody, and you'll see the announcements coming out through the different schools. It's probably good for probably 4th grade up through about 10th is what it looks like. So it
What
should
was that
cover.
date again?
It is March 7th with a snow date of the 9th. Tickets available online, which is a nice way to do it. So in the short time I've been here, and from what I've seen and talking to our staff, my staff at the middle school, my major pieces that I'm asking for are actually staffing. To start, there are technically 3 positions. One of them already exists. I'm actually asking to increase those hours on that position. I know it's come up before, but I'm bringing it forward again. It's the admin assistant in our wellness center. And it's the person that sits at the desk as students come in, does the triage for us, basically directs the students to one of the 5 different rooms we have in there, keeps track of where they are. Right now, that person is working 3 days a week, from 9 to about 1:30. And the other 2 days are handled by volunteers. Now, we're grateful for volunteers, don't get me wrong. But given the amount of data, the amount of confidential information that is now increasingly needed to be dealt with in that office, and I'll explain why in a minute, I'd be much more comfortable with having someone paid for 5 days a week at those hours. Right now it's 3. I'd like to increase it to 5. So it'd be Monday through Friday from 9 to 1:30. And the reason for that goes beyond the triage. Obviously, this person is in charge of putting in all our health records that come in at the beginning of the year through the packets that we put out. They handle the schedules of both our guidance counselor and our nurse. They handle all calendars and appointments, passes for appointments for students. They distribute them and track down the students for those appointments. The trainer schedule, as a trainer comes in once a week to work with our students. They even change the linen in the different rooms that are used for the students that come in to meet with our wellness people. They coordinate with the health center in terms of things that are going on here at the high school. They assist with all events such as the flu clinics, dental clinics, vision screenings. And the biggest thing that started to increase is they are in charge of handling a totally separate database for expanded services through Maine General. And we currently have 44% of our student population, or 123 students, that are taking advantage of that. And those kids have parents who have agreed that they may see a counselor or a physician's assistant through the school-based health center. The administrative assistant registers these students. It's a whole different database with all different information for what we normally deal with, and coordinates and schedules their appointments either with counselors, physician assistants, or whatever health person they may need to see. That's been a major increase in that position, and the amount of data that's involved and the fact that it's a different database requires more time than typically our paid person is able to handle during their 3 days. So I'd like to present that as a possible increase for our wellness center. The other two positions I'm looking at are full-time positions. The first is a world language teacher. We currently do offer world language in the middle school, and we offer it in a couple different ways. All students are given 7 weeks of a world language each year. So the hope is, over the course of 3 years, I'll speak up over that. The hope is over 3 years that the students will get 7 weeks of Spanish, 7 weeks of German, 7 weeks of French over the course of their career. It doesn't always happen that way because we only have 2 world language teachers at this time. Those world language teachers are also required to teach full-time world language to students in 7th and 8th grade that would like to take that. Because we only have 2, it means that students that want to have a full year of world language need to be pulled out of a core class. So they're being pulled out of math or reading workshop or writing workshop or science every other day in order to make up the requirements of taking a full year foreign language. Right now, based on the proficiency-based diploma law, they're calling for all students to demonstrate proficiency in at least 1 language in addition to English as part of the criteria for receipt of a high school diploma. Maine's guiding principles are also requiring that students leave school as a clear and effective communicator in at least 1 language in addition to English. The studies show that the sooner you can get the kids involved with a language, the easier it's going to be for them to attain it, to acquire it. Right now, we only have 65 out of 184 students in the 7th and 8th grade, or 35% of our students taking full year world language. So the other students are coming up to the high school at a disadvantage because they haven't had that experience, and they're going to have to pick up that proficiency in the 4 years that they're here. We'd like to address that by having a 3rd world language teacher added to our curriculum and to our staff, and try to give those students more access. There was a time that our school had 3 world language teachers, and that position was cut a while ago, was my understanding. But at that point, we will be able to offer world language full year to the majority of our students in the middle school. And we'd like to revisit that and see if we can do it again.
When you say full year, you mean a full year of one particular language, or do they have to?
It would mean a full year of the students would be able to choose between the 3 languages and be able to take a full year of French, German, or Spanish. And that full year typically is spread over the 2 years of 7th and 8th grade. So they could, from what I understand, and Dwayne, correct me if I'm, is Dwayne still here? Oh, there he is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is if they can achieve proficiency through the ACTFL test at the end of their 8th grade year, they could actually have high school credit coming into high school and some more flexibility when they get here around their credits. Yep.
Can you explain to us how that process, is it still that 7th and 8th graders who are a certain kind of student are invited to take a world language, and there are still students who are not invited, and those kids are kind of getting left behind because you lack the number of teachers that you need?
Yeah, there are some students that are definitely invited. There are some parents that do ask that their students have that opportunity. And I have been involved in meetings this year where it comes down to, does the student need the world language, this is really excited to try to get, or do they need the reading class? And because of our staffing right now, we haven't got flexibility in terms of, can we put that student in the reading class? Can they take it at the same time? It's been awkward. So yes, there are still students that are invited to be part of that program. And there are also students that parents have requested that.
So my point being that not every student in the middle school is afforded that same opportunity.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have another full-time position, right?
One, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other position is I'm requesting an RTI Math EdTech 3, specifically to work with our math RTI person. When I originally wrote this, I was looking at a position to be split between literacy and math. In the time since I've written it, I think math is more of our need right now, looking at test results and looking at some of the numbers that we have. My specialty when I was teaching was math and science, and my national board certification was in K-8 mathematics. So I have some ideas about how to address some of these issues. This is just kind of a start of what I'm considering in terms of how to strengthen our math program at the middle school. That process has already been started before I got here. I think Sarah Caban's been doing an excellent job in terms of bringing our math teachers up to speed on what modern math teaching looks like, what they should be considering in terms of the standards, and the learning rounds, the instructional rounds that they've been doing, which have been fabulous this year at the middle school. It's finally gotten off the ground, and the teachers are really engaged in it. The reason I want to look at math ed tech is because right now, as I said earlier, we have 77 students overall, below the 35th percentile on the NWEA. 43 of those are sixth graders, 22 are 7th graders, and 12 are 8th graders. So we have been able to lower those numbers, which is the goal as they come through the school. We obviously want to lower them more. If you look at our MAA results, we're in the 25th percentile for the state. We're basically ranked 30th out of 122 schools. However, when you really look at those results, only 40% of our students right now are either at the standard or exceeding the standard, okay? If we were able to get the math ed tech, what that would allow us to do is, right now, our math ed tech is dealing with tier 3 pullout students. They don't have the schedule, the time in their schedule right now to go into the classroom and support those teachers, to support those kids that are still in the classroom that can't access RTI because of the numbers. The ed tech would allow us to either use the ed tech to go in and support those students or allow the interventionists to go in. It would also allow the interventionists time to check in with teachers and work with them during their prep periods to look at strategies to address those students that need that support that they're not getting right now. As a separate piece of that too, I would like to look at that person becoming someone to help our RTI students with their executive functioning. And when I say that, I'm talking about their ability to plan and prioritize, their time management, their ability to initiate tasks, and their attention and how to focus in a class. If you look at our student demographics in terms of RTIs, you would see that those students typically have a very difficult time with those skills. And giving them some of that during this math RTI time, I think would benefit them in all classes, but it would also benefit them specifically in math and how they're learning. So that's my proposal.
Thank you.
Trish?
Yes.
I have a question, actually, back on world languages.
Sure.
I was just thinking, you said something about they could get high school credit for what they had done.
If they take, there's a national test called from ACTFL, which is the Association of Teachers of Foreign Languages. Basically, if they get to a certain, I think it's they have different levels that you have to attain. If they attain what's called a mid-novice level, then they're considered proficient. So, and I know in talking to Dwayne, they were looking at if they get to a certain level in the 8th grade, they would look at that as giving credit for their French 1, Spanish 1, German 1, because it's offered in all 3 languages.
So they'd go ahead and start German 2 or whatever when they got to the high school?
That's the possibility, yes.
Okay, because I guess my question was, I'm just thinking about college applications and things, and I don't think that there would be the same thought put into somebody taking 7th or 8th grade German as there would 11th or 12th or whatever, and I just hate to see kids be somehow
You need to speak
misled
up.
that way.
Yeah.
No, I see what you're saying, and part of it is because we're going to that proficiency model, and they're going to be required not so much to have taken French 1 or French 2, but to achieve that level of proficiency. It's going to change the way we look at that a little
Right,
bit.
but if they achieve that proficiency in the 8th grade, it probably is not going to show up in their high school transcript, which is what's going to.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
For college.
Yeah, based on what we'll be offering, I don't see them getting to the proficiency level they need at the high school. I think what we'd be allowed to do is allow them to accelerate through so that they can get that proficiency in a shorter amount of time at the high school. I don't think they'd get to that level in the 8th grade based on what we offer for curriculum.
But it does make a difference when they go into high school, what they enter. So if you take German all through high school as a German full-time, German student, you can end up in German 5 Trish by the time you're a senior.
Yes.
Same, and we have that new French program at the high school that is actually a certificate in French from the University of Maine, which is an honors French program. So I think there are some real benefits to maybe adding another world teacher, in my opinion.
It would definitely give us the flexibility to offer it to more students, with the hope being that the majority of our students would have that opportunity.
What would happen if you changed the structure of the class to go ahead and maybe instead of offering 3, you offered 2, or, no?
That's a possibility. We could look at doing that. I know there are 3 currently offered at the high school. Right now, the 2 teachers we have are qualified in French and German. We actually don't have a Spanish teacher at this point. They are teaching Spanish just because it's a need, and because of the basic level of it, they're able to do that. If we needed to go back to 2, we'd still, even if we did 2 languages, we would still be in the same situation we're right now, where we wouldn't be able to offer it other than a time where students would have to be pulled off of their other core classes. Like there isn't a spot in the
I guess I was wondering if maybe the schedule was to change, maybe you went ahead and modified that in some way as a possibility.
We can look at modifying the schedule. Matter of fact, that's something we're going to be looking at, because we know the schedule right now doesn't address, we have students being pulled out of many classes to address that. It would mean, in order to do that, it would mean a total restructuring of the middle school to get to that point.
I'll be honest. My student is one of those students that's being pulled, and I think I was honestly horrified to think that, wait, what? You're going to be missing key pieces of your education. The teachers are very good at modifying the program for him, and he's doing fine as far as I understand. But I guess I wonder if the schedule was to change in some way that would facilitate him having a fuller experience, I would certainly be very interested to see how we could maybe possibly do that.
Yeah, and we actually are going to be looking at that in the spring to see how we can better address it, because, as I say, it's not just world language. There are other pieces that are affected as well, and it's something that needs to, we don't need to be pulling students out as much as we do for other classes as well. So that's a piece we need to look at in Will.
How many languages are spoken at the school?
In the middle school?
Do you have middle school students from?
Officially, we don't have any ELL students, from what I can tell, in the Power School. Normally, if students coming with ELL, it's indicated in their records. We do have students that speak a second language. We have several students that do speak German. I know of a few that do speak French, based on what's going on at home and who their parents are. But what I've got, that's just anecdotal right now.
Okay, the question just came to mind.
Sure.
I guess Again, couldn't you, if we ended up not being able to switch anything around and it had to stay the way it is now, is it a parent decision whether their child gets taken out of class or not? I too had a kid that went through the same thing that John said, but I tried to look at it as though she was being given an opportunity to then go into high school and enter this honors French program and come out of high school, hopefully. I mean, I've paid the money for the credits for a certificate in French from the University of Maine, which would then allow her not to have to take a language in college. So to me, while I didn't really like her coming out of math, excuse me?
Or she could just take the AP test too.
She's chosen to do it this way, and that's what my family chose. But what I'm saying is, if we left it like this and nothing, we don't add another teacher, do you leave it up to the parents to make that individual decision whether they're taken out and such?
Yes, what it usually involves, my understanding, I know we're going to be making it a little bit clearer this year, because I understood last year there was some miscommunication and some confusion. But yes, what will happen is those students who the teachers feel could benefit from this, and I'm not clear on the criteria right now, but we're going to be addressing that, would send a letter home to the parents, explain to the parents that this is an opportunity. However, to get this opportunity, you would have to skip a class. Right, it's what it is now. So it would be what it is now, and then those parents have the ability to choose whether or not they want the student to go in and miss that class every other day, or whether they rather wait till high school. So it's pretty much the same way it would be right now, I believe.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Dwayne. Dwayne Conway, principal at the high school.
Long night, huh?
Yeah, it's been a long night. Good night, though. Yeah. It was really interesting watching Chris St. Clair present on the standard that she covered with all freshmen, and that's really what we're looking at as a school district with proficiency, except that's going to be on hundreds of standards. So, teaching's changed a lot. Our jobs have changed a lot, and they're going to continue to change. So I'm going to take a few minutes and go over some highlights from the high school and go through our budget. Shouldn't take more than 7 or 8 minutes. Every member of the teaching staff at the high school had input into creating our budget, with learning leaders ultimately submitting the final budget for their department. Our main goals with the budget are to keep the school moving forward, to support our students as always, and to meet our legal requirements under the proficiency-based diploma law. High school's grown tremendously over the past several years, and we still have a lot more growing to do. Our recent MEA scores in math and English placed Marana Cook second among the 13 Western Maine collaborative schools, which are great. Second was great, except for a 2-man race. This was a 13-man race. Our dual enrollment program, as you know, is second to none in the country. Truly believe that, and everything we get back from the different groups that we belong to say that. It's accessible to all our students at every level, and that's pretty special. So we've done a lot in the past years to transform Marana Cook. And I'm just going to go over a few of those really quick. We've implemented an advisory training program for all new staff members. We've added a literacy interventionist and math interventionist because of your support and the community's great support. We've added focus time, which allows all students to receive RTI services from all teachers. We've added a freshman teaming model, which you saw tonight. That's a big deal. Those teachers, historically, really, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we added in common planning time, so those teachers could meet in their departments, so that all English teachers could meet together and all math teachers could meet together. That was a big step for us. We always had that time, but it wasn't coordinated, which is, shame on us for that. Now those freshman teachers have that common planning time within their department, English, math, and so on, but they also have it horizontally with all ninth grade teachers. So that's just awesome. It's a great time for them to share and grow and support students. We've added the Habits of Work rubric, which was a necessary step moving towards proficiency to take behavior out of academic grading. Added the Writing Center for our students to be supported by their peers during study halls. Redesigned the alternative ed program to align with standards and make it more hands-on. Introduced credit recovery, which has dramatically decreased our course failure rate and increased our graduation rate. One of the few factors that, or probably many factors, that has increased it from 83% in 2013 to 91.96% this past year. introduced the freshman home visitation program, which you folks know about, implemented restorative practices, and redesigned our professional learning community to help drive our whole school. Also turned 2 dean positions last year with your support into 1 full-time position, and that's been really a great support for our staff and students, and we hired the right person for the job for that. So I'm going to go through our budget real quick and just talk about the additions for each department so you know about those. There's no personnel being added at the high school. We could certainly use it as, you know, as other schools. Currently, we're really only giving RTI Tier 3 to, you know, really freshmen and sophomores, primarily freshmen, because we have a large number of students and not a big RTI teaching staff. And we're working on improving that, and the primary way we're doing that is through differentiation, like you said.
What's your class size?
I think 13, around 13. It's a tough deal because we're a smaller high school, 360 kids, to be able to offer the variety of courses that we do. You have some classes that are 20, 22, 23, 24, and some that are at, you know, 9 or 10, which is the threshold we've been asked to hold to.
Thank you.
So industrial arts, we'll go through department by department, is asking for an increase of $3,000 in supplies to match a donation from By the Board Lumber Company. We cut it last year, and this year we'd like to put it back in to match their donation. Also asking for a $15,000 router, which he asked for last year. Yes?
Sorry, how do we follow along with this? I'm really confused. The other one's pretty self.
So mine's not as good, right? So our budget's a little different. It's really by department, and that's laid out on your high school sheet, the different departments. You can see I believe you can see the percentage increase.
Look on page 17, Sean.
Yeah, fourth line down, you'll see that line's gone up quite a bit. That's the
Instruction
department.
IA.
Yeah.
205%.
So you want to look at that number, and 205% is definitely a lot, and we're asking for a lot. But you look at the original number, so it's up 205% from that.
What's in that?
The $3,000 for an increase in lumber supplies. We're doing a tremendous amount with that, and our alternative ed program is accessing that a lot. And also the CNC router, which is a really detailed computerized router that he's requesting as a piece of equipment. So the alternative program is asking for an additional $1,000 in supplies. Over the past few years, that program's moved, as you know, it's moved away from a packet-driven program to really a hands-on program. The principal's office, we're asking for $2,000 for books for freshman visits. Guidance office, our MELMAC grant is closing. We thought it was going to end last year, and it's going to end this year from all indication. So we're looking to cover some of the expenses from that grant. That grant's used for college aspirations and to visit colleges. We've budgeted $4,350 for travel for college visits and $250 for guidance travel. Our guidance counselors are traveling more and more to local high schools and more to colleges throughout Maine because of our super robust dual enrollment program. They have to go and meet with those schools and make sure that our kids' credit gets accepted. So it's $250 worth of reimbursement travel they're asking for, which is pretty fair. The media budget is pretty much staying the same, library media. Computer education is asking for roughly a $1,300 increase. They would like, or she would like 2 robots at $675 each. They'll be used to program and then taken to different robotic events, specifically for coding events. Social studies.
I'm sorry, specifically for what?
For coding, for computer coding.
Oh, coding, yes.
Coding.
Yes.
Social studies budget is decreasing by a few dollars. Business is requesting $1,750 for new accounting textbooks. World language budget is decreasing slightly. Art is asking for $1,100 for repair of equipment that needs to be done, and also some new supplies and equipment. Science is requesting a $300 increase to repair and maintenance on microscopes, plus $1,000 for biology and engineering. Engineering was a new course for us last year, and $3,000 for new biology and geology textbooks. Math is staying the same. English is decreasing slightly. Health would like an increase of $300 in supplies. PE would like an increase of $50 in supplies. Our assessment line for the high school is changing slightly. We give the PSAT at the high school. Historically, that was paid for by the state. The state's no longer paying for it. We use the MELMAC grant to pay for it this year. We won't have that grant next year, so we need to cover that. Furniture, this is something different in the high school budget this year. It was typically done by department, and we're requesting at the high school a furniture line, which has been added, of $7,000, I believe. We have some desks that kids can't fit under, and just need an update, a continuous update of furniture. So that's kind of that continuous maintenance. Lockers, they'll be out of Kurt when he presents.
Yep.
Also asking for an additional stipend position of $2,000. I believe it'll be for a social studies learning leader. We don't have a social studies department head right now. And as we move more and more towards proficiency, we really need that. But that's our budget. And when Jeff got up and talked about the amount that we can control within our budgets, it really gets pretty small, even though the increases are big. And I know they're big as a community member. What we can control is pretty small.
So after everybody has, thank you, Dwayne. After everybody's presented tonight, didn't last year we have a sheet on each, it was kind of like a table that said high school and then listed all of his wants with the number beside it, and then all of Janet's wants with her numbers. That would be easy if it was in one, like, one format.
Missy, I think honestly it'd be maybe even easier if we even had an itemized, just to be able to itemize and say, this is what's being asked.
It's a summary of.
It's a summary of everything that they've added.
This is not an itemized list.
No, that's what we're saying.
Oh, okay.
A separate sheet that's going to summarize all the.
Yeah, so then what we did, John, was we kind of prioritized from that list and worked backwards. But does that come later?
No, I'm not asking for the request for all the requests. I'm asking an itemized list of the budget. Right.
The full itemized.
Right.
155 pages.
Right.
Most people don't want to see that. I mean, I have it. I have the 155-page budget.
Can we have it?
Yeah.
Of course you can.
I don't want it.
I want to see a snapshot of what they're asking for as increases over last year's budget in one piece of paper or two pieces of paper, however it may be.
But to have a conversation with you, if I've looked at the entire budget and said, well, geez, do we need,
You're welcome to do that, John.
Well,
Most of us have been here so long, we know what is included there, so, or at least.
I think it more reasonable or more promising to say I'm interested in this budget item and then find out the history and whatever. Maybe not.
Everyone works differently, though.
Maybe not. I'm a little brain dead.
Yep.
Let's wrap this up. Sorry. Go ahead, Gary, say what you want to say. No, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I said, "Yep, I want to go."
Oh, you want to go too?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that one, Gary. Seems
All
like
in
that's what we
favor?
do,